Hi guys. Tonight we descend quietly into a world hidden beneath the familiar landscapes of Britain. The air above is thick with mist, the ancient forests stretching endlessly in dim shadows. You step softly along rain-slicked paths, feeling the earth damp beneath your boots, noticing the faint scent of moss and wet leaves that has lingered for centuries. Fog clings to the low hills, and every distant sound of wind or dripping water seems amplified in the stillness. Above, the last vestiges of daylight slip behind the horizon, leaving the landscape suspended between memory and night. The distant cries of birds have softened to nothing, leaving only the whisper of ancient trees and the subtle rustle of small creatures moving unseen. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, pause for a moment. Consider the ground beneath your feet. Beneath the layers of soil, grass, and stone lies a hidden world older than the roads and villages you walk past daily. You're not just moving through space, but time. Each step echoes against the footprints of humans who lived long before Rome rose, long before recorded history marked this land. Their lives were measured by the slow turning of seasons, the rise and fall of rivers, and the warmth or cruelty of fire. You notice the uneven earth beneath you, the faint depressions that might once have held huts or forges, and wonder at the hands that moulded them so long ago. A faint path opens ahead, flanked by low hedgerows. Their branches lean over the narrow strip of road, bare and skeletal against the muted sky. Water gathers in the shallow ruts, reflecting dim shards of fading light. You step carefully, sensing the subtle rise and fall of terrain beneath the surface, aware that what appears natural may conceal human design. Historians still debate whether these raised roads were simple pathways for grazing animals or deliberate routes connecting early settlements. You bend down, letting your fingers brush against cold, damp earth, tracing the faint outlines of stones set long ago. They are smooth and worn, not by modern wheels but by countless footsteps, perhaps belonging to people whose names are now lost to time. The air is cooler here, and a faint smell of wet earth rises from the ground, mingling with distant hints of decaying leaves. You notice that the rhythm of the landscape changes as you move forward. Small ditches carry water silently, and hedgerows create narrow corridors, almost guiding you towards something hidden. Every now and then, your eyes catch glimpses of subtle mounds, low and rounded, half concealed by grass. Archaeologists remain divided on whether these are merely natural formations or remnants of prehistoric structures. You pause, crouching to examine a faint stone outline peeking through the soil. It is small, unassuming, yet it feels deliberate, as if someone placed it carefully, centuries before the Romans ever arrived. Your footsteps become softer as you approach the first unmistakable signs of ancient activity. A fragment of pottery, worn and chipped, lies half buried near a shallow depression. You pick it up gently, noting the faint scratches etched into the surface, the hand-shaped imperfections that betray the maker's intent. No one fully understands why these simple designs appear here and nowhere else for miles. You continue, noticing clusters of dark stones arranged in loose circles. Like the foundations of tiny homes or communal spaces, the wind carries a faint whisper through the surrounding hedgerows, as if the past itself is trying to reach you. Every step draws you deeper into this quiet history. The field opens into a slight depression, where faint mounds suggest the remains of dwellings that have long since collapsed. You crouch to feel the texture of the soil, moist and pliant, carrying the weight of centuries. The sun has fully vanished, leaving only the faintest glow reflected from distant clouds. You notice how the landscape itself seems to hold its breath, as though it knows the secrets buried beneath your feet. Archaeologists continue to question the exact purpose of these depressions. Were they homes, storage pits, or places of ritual? Every interpretation feels both plausible and incomplete, leaving a quiet tension that lingers with each movement. A low ridge guides you toward the edge of the field, where the faint outline of a shallow ditch catches your eye. It curves unexpectedly, hinting at deliberate shaping by human hands. You kneel, pressing your palm against the cold stone edge that has survived centuries of weather. Small fragments of charcoal and ash remain embedded in the soil, suggesting fire once played a role here. Perhaps someone tended a hearth, warming themselves against the chill of prehistoric nights, watching the sky fade into darkness above Britain. Some scholars suggest these fires were purely domestic, while others believe they held ceremonial significance. You notice how even the simplest details can carry multiple layers of meaning, a reminder that history is never fully settled. You rise slowly, letting your gaze wander over the surrounding field. The earth rolls gently beneath the fog, hiding further mounds, depressions, and stones that hint at structures yet undiscovered. The quiet is profound, filled with the muted hum of distant water, the whisper of wind through skeletal branches, and the subtle rustle of unseen creatures. You realize that every stone, every mound, and every shallow pit is a doorway into a past that refuses to fully reveal itself. Your path now leads toward the first tangible entrance to the underground world. A slight depression deepens into a narrow trench, partially concealed by overhanging grass and tangled roots. You step carefully, feeling the earth give slightly beneath your weight. The air grows cooler and heavier, carrying a faint scent of damp stone and soil long undisturbed. Each step echoes softly, a reminder that you are moving not only through space, but through the faint remnants of lives that existed here long before any recorded history. The shadows deepen as the trench narrows, suggesting the beginnings of a hidden chamber below. You pause, noticing the faint lines of stones, carefully aligned and partially covered by centuries of soil. You run your fingers along the cool surface, feeling subtle grooves and scratches that hint at human craftsmanship. Some scholars propose these could have been early storage areas or simple dwellings, yet no definitive explanation has emerged. The uncertainty adds a quiet tension to your journey, a subtle invitation to imagine, to wonder, and to listen closely to the silent stories whispered by the earth itself. Above, the sky's now a dim grey curtain, almost blending with the fog that drifts low across the hills. You take a moment to breathe, the damp air filling your lungs, carrying with it the faint aroma of stone, moss, and centuries of buried life. You notice how the soundscape has shifted. Distant dripping water echoes faintly in your mind, and the rustling leaves now seem to form a rhythm that guides your descent. There is a calm unease, a sense that you are approaching a threshold between the familiar world above and the ancient, hidden landscapes beneath. You step forward from the shallow trench, letting your eyes adjust to the subtle dimness. The fog above begins to thin, replaced by the quiet weight of earth pressing around you. The grass and hedgerows give way to uneven stone surfaces, fragments of walls that rise from the soil as if holding back centuries of forgotten history. You notice how the stones are worn, not by modern tools, but by countless hands over generations, shaped and placed with care. Historians still debate whether these walls once formed part of communal dwellings, small defensive structures, or simple storage chambers, and no single theory fully explains their purpose. A faint crunch under your boots signals your first encounter with scattered shards of pottery and stone tools. They're small, almost unremarkable at first, yet each carries the imprint of human life. You crouch to examine a piece of pottery, its edges smooth and darkened by time, the faintest traces of incised patterns barely visible. Some researchers suggest these objects were part of ritual offerings, while others argue they were merely utilitarian, created for everyday life. The ambiguity draws you deeper into contemplation. Every artifact is a silent witness, a whisper from a past that refuses to be fully understood. You move along a narrow ridge where the land dips slightly, forming shallow depressions that may have once contained dwellings or workshops. The earth here feels more compact, the texture different, as if it has absorbed generations of footsteps, fire, and human activity. You notice a faint line of stones leading toward a partially hidden mound, overgrown with grass and ivy. Your hand brushes against the cold surface, feeling the subtle grooves and scratches carved long ago. Archaeologists remain divided on the dating of this site, with some placing it in the late prehistoric period, while others suggest it could predate known settlements by centuries. The air grows cooler as you approach the mound. A soft, musty smell rises from the soil, mingling with the scent of moss and damp leaves. You pause, listening to the distant sound of water trickling through hidden channels beneath the earth. The rhythm is subtle, almost hypnotic, and it seems to guide your movements as you trace the mound's perimeter. Small depressions in the stone suggest the use of wooden supports or other structures, but the evidence is fragmentary, leaving much to speculation. You imagine the hands that place these stones, shaping spaces for work, rest, or ritual. You notice faint impressions in the soil, shallow grooves that might have been pathways, worn by repeated travel over long periods. You step carefully along them, imagining the people who once walked these same lines. Some may have been traders carrying small bundles, others hunters returning with game, and some perhaps children running between shelters under the watchful eyes of elders. Scholars continue to debate whether these paths were formal roads or simply traces left by repeated use. Each interpretation offers a glimpse into life long before written history, yet each remains incomplete. The ridge descends into a narrow valley where the first signs of an actual chamber appear. Stones have been stacked deliberately, forming partial walls that hint at enclosed spaces beneath the earth. You crouch to examine the edges, noticing tiny fragments of charcoal embedded in the soil. Fires once burned here, their smoke lost to centuries of accumulation. Some researchers propose these were domestic hearths, while others suggest ceremonial purposes. The truth remains elusive, a quiet mystery embedded in the very earth you walk upon. You continue along the shallow walls, observing how the space opens slightly into a hollow that could be the entrance to a larger underground network. The air carries a subtle chill, damp and earthy, and you notice the faintest echo of distant water. You pause to listen, realizing that these sounds have persisted for centuries, unchanged, bearing witness to human activity long since gone. Your mind wanders to the people who once inhabited this space. How did they survive the harsh winters? What did they eat? And how did they navigate the challenges of life in a land still largely untamed? Archaeologists remain divided on these questions, offering plausible theories without definitive answers. A low mound of earth partially blocks your path. You kneel and brush away moss and loose soil, revealing the edge of a stone slab. The surface is cool, worn smooth, and engraved with faint lines, barely visible under layers of time. You trace them gently with your fingertips, feeling the deliberate effort that created them. Some suggest these marks were symbolic, perhaps part of ritual practices or early forms of communication. Others argue they were functional, related to storage, construction, or daily life. The uncertainty adds a quiet tension, a subtle curiosity that compels you to look deeper. The valley narrows into a gentle slope, leading you toward what appears to be a deliberate cut into the earth. You step cautiously, the soil damp beneath your feet. Small roots cling to the sides, and the faint smell of wet stone rises as you descend. You notice subtle indentations along the slope, possibly remnants of steps or simply natural erosion. The slope opens into a shallow depression, hinting at the presence of a hidden chamber just beyond your sight. The air grows heavier, and the muffled sound of dripping water seems to echo from below. Scholars continue to question whether this was a domestic space, a storage area, or part of a ritual complex. The ambiguity keeps your mind alert yet calm, immersed in quiet wonder. You kneel at the edge of the chamber, feeling the cool stone beneath your hands. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and charcoal are scattered across the floor, each a delicate fragment of human history. You notice the faint pattern of stones forming a rough circle, perhaps the base of a small structure or hearth. The arrangement suggests intentionality, a deliberate shaping of space by hands long gone. Some researchers argue that these chambers formed part of a broader network connecting settlements across the region, while others see them as isolated pockets of activity. The uncertainty invites reflection, drawing you deeper into the rhythm of the past. Above, the fog begins to thin, and you glimpse the muted outlines of trees on the hills surrounding the site. The contrast between the living landscape and the buried spaces beneath is striking. You realize that the world above, with its forests, fields, and distant villages, has continued largely unchanged while the chambers below have remained hidden. Sealed in silence, you step carefully along the edge, noting how the air shifts slightly with each movement, carrying the subtle scent of wet earth and moss. The quiet is profound, filled with distant echoes and the faint hum of ancient memory, guiding your descent further into the hidden world beneath Britain. You move deeper along the uneven floor of the valley, feeling the damp earth press lightly beneath your boots. Each step stirs the faint scent of soil and moss, mingled with the subtle aroma of decayed leaves that have collected here for centuries. The light above is now a distant memory, and your eyes adjust to the muted grey of stones partially covered in soil. You notice how the ground narrows slightly, guiding you forward as if the landscape itself intends to lead you to something hidden. The stillness is profound, punctuated only by the distant trickle of water echoing softly through unseen channels beneath the earth. The first signs of prehistoric life emerge along the chamber walls. Small flints and broken pottery fragments are embedded in the soil, faint reminders of hands that shaped them thousands of years ago. You bend to pick up a small shard, its surface rough yet deliberate, traces of deliberate scoring barely visible. Some scholars suggest these fragments are remnants of daily life, discarded or broken over time. Others argue they may have had symbolic or ritual significance, perhaps offering insight into beliefs that have long been lost. The uncertainty draws you further, heightening the quiet curiosity that accompanies each movement. You step along a narrow ledge where the walls of the valley rise slightly, stones stacked with care, creating shallow alcoves partially hidden by overgrowth. The stones feel cool beneath your fingertips, and their surfaces carry subtle grooves and scratches, perhaps from tools used long before any written record of Britain existed. You pause to imagine the hands that placed them, shaping a space that has survived millennia of weather, erosion, and human neglect. Archaeologists remain divided on the purpose of these alcoves. Were they for storage, for ritual, or simply structural supports for the earth above? The lack of certainty invites reflection rather than anxiety, creating a quiet mental tension that is both hypnotic and calming. The ground dips gently as you follow the natural contour, leading to a shallow hollow where the first unmistakable signs of dwellings appear. Small mounds rise slightly above the earth, their shapes softened by centuries of grass and moss. You kneel to examine the soil, feeling subtle indentations that suggest wooden posts or walls once stood here. Some researchers argue these structures were simple homes, while others suggest communal spaces for social gatherings or ceremonial purposes. Each possibility opens a window into the lives of people whose names and stories are almost entirely lost to time. A faint line of stones forms a rough path leading deeper into the hollow. You trace it with your fingers, sensing the deliberate alignment. Subtle, yet purposeful. It is as if someone once intended to guide travellers or inhabitants along a specific route. The wind carries faint sounds from above, distant and muted, blending with the soft echo of dripping water from underground channels. You pause to listen, imagining the footsteps of people long gone, moving carefully along the same path, perhaps carrying food, tools, or messages from one chamber to another. Scholars continue to debate whether these pathways connected isolated dwellings or formed part of a larger, hidden network beneath the land. You descend slightly, noting how the walls of the hollow begin to curve inward, forming the faint outline of a partially enclosed space. The air grows cooler and heavier, carrying the scent of damp stone and earth that has lain undisturbed for centuries. You step carefully, aware of the subtle rise and fall of the ground beneath you, imagining how ancient inhabitants might have navigated the same terrain. Small fragments of charcoal embedded in the soil hint at past fires, perhaps for warmth or cooking. Yet their precise function remains uncertain. Some scholars suggest ritual purposes, while others argue the evidence points to purely practical use. A low mound of earth catches your attention, partially concealing a flat stone embedded in the soil. You kneel to brush away moss and loose dirt, revealing faint carvings along its edge. The lines are shallow, delicate, and difficult to interpret, possibly symbolic or functional. You trace them slowly, imagining the care and attention that created them. Researchers remain divided on their significance, offering interpretations that range from early forms of writing to simple markers of ownership or placement. The ambiguity is compelling, drawing you further into the hypnotic rhythm of exploration and quiet discovery. The chamber widens slightly, revealing the beginnings of an underground passage. The stones lining the walls are worn smooth, their surfaces cool and faintly damp. You step forward, listening to the distant echoes of water trickling somewhere beyond your sight. Each sound seems amplified in the stillness, creating an atmosphere both soothing and intriguing. You notice the subtle layering of soil and stone, evidence of centuries of accumulation and human modification. Some scholars propose these passages were used for storage, others suggest temporary shelters, and a few argue they might have held ritual significance. No single explanation fully satisfies, leaving a quiet tension that enhances your sense of immersion. You pause to consider the faint impressions on the stone floor. Shallow grooves and indentations suggest repeated movement over long periods. You imagine children running between chambers, adults carrying small bundles, and elders observing from the shadows. The rhythm of daily life is almost audible in your mind, the subtle hum of survival echoing through the cool air. Archaeologists continue to debate whether these impressions are evidence of regular habitation or sporadic use. The unanswered questions are part of the chamber's allure, offering a gentle curiosity that keeps you moving forward with quiet anticipation. A faint slope leads you deeper, the air growing colder and the dampness more pronounced. You notice small roots clinging to the stone walls, and the smell of wet earth rises more distinctly. Each step echoes softly, mingling with distant drips and faint draughts from unseen openings. You run your hand along the stone edge, feeling subtle irregularities and scratches that hint at centuries of human touch. Some scholars suggest that the builders of these spaces had knowledge of structural techniques far advanced for their time, while others remain skeptical, pointing to natural erosion as a simpler explanation. The uncertainty deepens the calm tension, a hypnotic pull guiding you further underground. Above, the faint outlines of trees on the distant hills remain visible through breaks in the fog, a reminder of the world above while you descend into spaces untouched for millennia. You step carefully, noticing how the air shifts slightly with each movement, carrying the subtle scent of moss, stone, and soil. The quiet is profound, filled with the echo of distant water, the gentle whisper of wind through cracks above, and the faint hum of centuries-long silence. You're aware that the path ahead may reveal more chambers, more traces of lives that existed long before any recorded history. Every stone, every shard, and every shallow depression is a doorway to a past that is both present and elusive, waiting to be understood. You step carefully from the narrow passage into a larger chamber, the cool, damp air enveloping you like a soft cloak. The walls rise in uneven layers, stones stacked with care yet softened by centuries of moisture and earth. A faint echo carries from the far corner, the sound of water dripping from hidden fissures somewhere deeper underground. You pause, letting your eyes adjust to the dim, flickering shadows, and notice subtle traces of human activity embedded in the stone. Evidence hints at deliberate shaping of space, yet no one fully understands who first carved these chambers or why they were placed here. Along the chamber floor, scattered fragments of flint and broken pottery catch the faint glow of your torchlight. You bend down to examine a shard with carefully incised lines. Some suggest these markings were symbolic, perhaps indicating ownership or a ritual purpose, while others propose they were functional, used in daily domestic life. Researchers continue to question how widespread such artifacts were, and whether they belong to a single group or multiple generations of people inhabiting this hidden world. You feel the weight of history pressing gently against your senses, a quiet reminder that this space was once alive with human presence. The chamber widens slightly, revealing what may have been a low bench or platform along one wall. The stone is worn smooth, suggesting repeated use over many years. A curious detail catches your attention, faint grooves etched into the surface that seem too deliberate to be natural erosion. Historians still argue whether these were used for ritual purposes or simply as a functional surface, perhaps for crafting or preparation of food. You run your fingers lightly along the stone, imagining the hands that shaped it, the lives that depended on such simple, enduring structures. You notice a faint passage branching off to one side, partially blocked by earth and roots. Moving closer, you see small indentations along the stone edge, evidence of human modification. Yet scholars remain divided on their purpose. Were they steps leading to deeper chambers or merely structural supports for a collapsing roof? The uncertainty lingers in your mind, a gentle tension that invites further exploration without disturbing the calm stillness of the chamber. In the centre of the room, a low mound of compacted soil suggests the remains of a hearth. Tiny fragments of charcoal embedded in the earth hint at fire once burning here. Some researchers propose that the hearth was used primarily for warmth and cooking, while others point to ceremonial possibilities, perhaps marking gatherings or seasonal rituals. The ambiguity draws you in, allowing you to imagine the flickering light of flames casting shadows against the stone walls, the quiet murmur of conversation, and the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air long after the fire has died. You take a slow step toward the opposite wall, noting faint impressions that could be footprints or the marks of small tools. A quirky tidbit emerges as you recognize the slight curvature of one impression, almost like the edge of a child's foot or a small animal moving through the chamber. Scholars continue to debate whether these traces represent human activity, animal movement, or simply natural erosion. The uncertainty does not disturb you, but instead heightens the hypnotic curiosity that has guided you deeper into this underground world. Your gaze moves upward, tracing the irregular stone ceiling. Patches of damp moss cling to the edges, and faint cracks hint at the slow movement of earth above. Some suggest that these chambers were carefully reinforced to prevent collapse, while others argue that erosion alone shaped the formations. The truth is likely a combination of both, a quiet collaboration of human intention and natural forces. You inhale slowly, the cool air filling your lungs, and feel a subtle connection to the people who once inhabited this space, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of the underground. A narrow corridor leads further into darkness, and you step lightly, listening to the echo of your own movement. Small, deliberate carvings on the walls catch your eye, faint symbols almost lost to time. Evidence hints at a symbolic or communicative purpose, yet no one fully understands their meaning. You trace the grooves with your fingertips, imagining the care and intent behind each mark. The chamber feels alive with memory, a quiet resonance of human presence that has endured through centuries of obscurity. Faint draughts of air move through the passage, carrying the scent of damp stone and earth, a subtle reminder that the underground is a living system. Breathing quietly beneath the surface of Britain, you pause to listen to distant dripping water, the rhythm steady and calm, a natural accompaniment to the silent stories preserved in stone and soil. Some scholars suggest these passages may have been part of a broader network connecting multiple chambers and settlements, while others propose they were isolated, serving the needs of a small, localized community. The ambiguity enhances the hypnotic effect, keeping your curiosity engaged while maintaining the slow, contemplative pace of exploration. In one corner of the chamber, small piles of stone suggest an intentional arrangement, perhaps marking a boundary, a storage area, or a place of significance. Historians still debate whether such arrangements were purely functional or carried ritual meaning. You step closer, feeling the uneven surfaces beneath your palms, noticing subtle scratches and indentations that hint at repeated human interaction. The space seems to hold its breath, waiting for your attention, as though inviting you to imagine the lives that unfolded here long before the world above imposed its structures and calendars. You move slowly toward the far end of the chamber, observing the way light and shadow play across the stone surfaces. Tiny flecks of mineral embedded in the walls catch the faint glow of your torch, creating a subtle sparkle that draws your gaze. A curious detail reveals itself in the arrangement of stones along the floor, a faint spiral pattern, almost imperceptible, that may indicate careful planning or a random accident shaped by time. Archaeologists remain divided on whether this pattern was intentional or coincidental, and the uncertainty deepens the chamber's quiet allure, keeping you engaged yet calm. Finally, you pause near the threshold of a narrower corridor leading downward. The air grows cooler and slightly heavier, carrying the faintest echo of dripping water and distant draughts. Evidence hints that this passage may lead to another chamber, perhaps part of a series of connected spaces hidden beneath the hills. No one fully understands the full extent of these underground networks, and the mystery beckons gently, inviting you to continue your descent. You take a slow, deliberate step forward, letting the quiet tension of the chamber guide your curiosity as you move deeper into the hidden world beneath Britain. You descend cautiously into the narrow corridor, feeling the cool, damp air wrap around you. Each step presses against the uneven stone floor, worn smooth by centuries of movement, or perhaps by the slow passage of time itself. The walls rise tightly on either side, a combination of rough-hewn stone and earth that seems to breathe quietly, exhaling the scent of wet soil and faint moss. You notice subtle grooves along the stone edges, evidence of human modification. Some scholars suggest they were used to guide walking, while others think they mark the boundaries of long-forgotten chambers. The purpose remains a mystery, and the ambiguity draws you further, deepening the immersive quiet of this hidden world. A faint glimmer catches your eye from the corner of the corridor. Small shards of pottery and flint fragments lie partially buried in the soil, their surfaces dulled by time. A curious detail emerges. One piece bears faint patterns resembling geometric shapes, something rare in prehistoric contexts. Historians still argue whether these shapes were purely decorative, a form of early symbolism, or even markers of ownership or trade. You kneel to examine them closely, letting your fingers brush over the smooth edges, imagining the hands that carefully made them, the lives they belong to. As you continue, the corridor widens slightly into a low-ceilinged chamber. The walls curve gently inward, giving the space an intimate, enclosed feeling. Small indentations along the floor suggest repeated movement, perhaps the daily rhythm of people navigating between spaces. Some researchers propose these chambers were domestic in nature, used for shelter or work, while others point to ritual possibilities, hinting at ceremonial practices now lost to history. You inhale slowly, the scent of damp stone and earth filling your lungs, and feel the quiet tension of centuries settling around you, neither threatening nor hostile, but deeply alive with memory. A faint depression in the centre of the chamber draws your attention. You kneel to examine it and notice traces of burned material embedded in the soil. Tiny fragments of charcoal and ash suggest fire was present, perhaps for warmth, cooking, or ritual. Scholars remain divided on the exact function, offering plausible explanations yet leaving room for speculation. You imagine the gentle flicker of flames casting shadows across the walls, illuminating the faint carvings and scratches that are scattered throughout the chamber. The air seems to hum softly with the echoes of human presence long gone. Your eyes are drawn upward to the ceiling, where faint mineral veins catch the flicker of your torch. The surface is irregular, and small indentations hint at structural reinforcement or decorative carving. Some suggest that these were early architectural choices to stabilize the chamber, while others believe they might have had symbolic or protective significance. The debate remains unresolved, adding to the quiet allure of the space. You move closer to inspect the walls, noting subtle variations in stone texture and colour, as if each layer tells a different chapter of the chamber's long history. A narrow passage opens to one side, partially obscured by roots and earth. You step carefully into it, the air growing cooler and heavier with each movement. Small stones line the floor, forming a faint path deeper into the earth. Evidence hints at intentional construction. Yet no one fully understands the extent of these underground networks. The passage curves gently, and you notice faint marks along the walls, almost like early tools were used to smooth or shape the stone. Some researchers propose these were functional, others suggest symbolic significance, and both possibilities exist simultaneously, a quiet paradox that enriches the hypnotic experience of exploration. You pause at a slight bend, noticing the faint sound of water dripping from an unseen source. The echo carries softly through the stone, creating a rhythm that blends seamlessly with the stillness of the chamber. A quirky tidbit emerges as you spot a small, round indentation in the floor. Too perfect to be random, scholars continue to debate its purpose, suggesting anything from a base for a post, a container for offerings, or even a primitive marker of time or ritual. You kneel to examine it closely, tracing the edges with your fingers, aware that even the smallest details carry whispers from centuries past. Further along, the corridor opens into a larger hollow, the walls rising higher, the ceiling dark and irregular. Small fragments of clay and stone litter the floor, hinting at past human activity. Some researchers believe this was a communal space, perhaps for gatherings, while others argue it might have been used for storage or craft work. You run your hands along the stone walls, feeling subtle scratches and indentations that suggest repeated interaction over time. The quiet tension of mystery lingers, drawing your attention to every detail, every echo, every fragment that has survived beneath the earth. You notice faint signs of layering in the soil along one side of the chamber. Stones and soil appear intentionally placed, creating terraces or platforms. Historians still argue whether these layers indicate different phases of occupation or a single. Continuous use over generations. You imagine people moving carefully across these surfaces, balancing bundles of food, tools, or firewood, their lives largely hidden from the world above. The corridor ahead narrows again, guiding you toward a deeper chamber. The sense of anticipation gentle and persistent. The air grows heavier as you step into the deeper space. The scent of damp stone and earth is stronger, mingled with the faint mineral tang of subterranean water. Evidence hints at careful architectural planning, yet no one fully understands the original purpose. Small, deliberate carvings on the walls catch your torchlight, and you trace them slowly, feeling the intent behind each mark. Researchers continue to question whether these carvings represent early symbols, functional indicators, or something entirely lost to time. The ambiguity is soothing, almost hypnotic, encouraging you to move forward with curiosity and calm focus. At the far end of the chamber, a slight incline suggests a continuation downward. You descend slowly, feeling the cool, moist stone beneath your hands. The faint echo of water grows louder, a subtle accompaniment to the whispers of the past that seem to emerge from the walls. A curious detail appears, small impressions along the slope, perhaps made by tools, feet, or even small animals. Scholars remain divided on their origin, each interpretation offering a window into the possibilities of ancient life. You pause to absorb the space, letting the quiet tension of mystery envelop you, guiding you deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You follow the incline downward, your hands brushing against the cool, damp walls of the corridor. The air grows heavier and carries a faint scent of wet stone and earth, mingling with the subtle aroma of moss that clings to the edges of the tunnel. Each step feels deliberate, as though the earth itself is guiding you deeper into a hidden history. Small stones crunch beneath your boots, and you notice irregular indentations along the floor, perhaps the remnants of ancient footpaths, worn over centuries by countless travellers long forgotten. Some researchers propose that these impressions were part of daily use, while others suggest they may have had ritual significance. The truth remains unresolved, leaving a quiet curiosity to settle into your mind. Along the walls, faint carvings catch your eye, etched carefully into the stone. The shapes are subtle, nearly invisible without careful attention, yet they suggest deliberate human action. Evidence hints at symbolic or communicative intent, but no one fully understands the meaning. You run your fingers lightly over the grooves, imagining the hands that created them, the quiet concentration required to make such delicate marks in the dim light of ancient torches. A curious detail emerges as you notice one carving appears to mimic natural forms, perhaps an early attempt to record the landscape above or mark the passage of seasons. Scholars remain divided on its purpose, each interpretation plausible yet inconclusive. The corridor widens into a low-ceilinged chamber. The stone walls curve gently inward, giving the space an intimate, almost protective feeling. Small piles of soil along the floor hint at deliberate arrangements, possibly to mark boundaries or designate areas for specific activity. Historians still debate whether these were domestic spaces or places intended for ritual practice. The chamber's quiet atmosphere encourages slow, reflective observation, and you notice how the faint echoes of your movement carry through the space, interacting with a subtle resonance of water dripping somewhere deeper in the earth. A shallow depression in the center draws your attention. You kneel to examine it and find tiny fragments of charcoal and ash embedded in the soil. Some suggest that these were remnants of fires used for warmth and cooking, while others argue that they may have been ceremonial, marking gatherings or seasonal rites. The ambiguity allows your imagination to wander gently, envisioning the soft glow of flames illuminating the stone walls, casting flickering shadows over carved symbols and worn surfaces. You can almost hear the quiet murmurs of conversation, the rhythm of daily life long past yet subtly preserved in the textures of the chamber. You notice the faint outline of a narrow passage leading further downward. The air grows cooler, heavier, and slightly damp as you step into it. Small indentations along the stone floor suggest repeated use, but their precise purpose is uncertain. Some researchers propose this corridor led to storage spaces. Others suggest hidden ritual chambers, while a few speculate that it may have connected to a larger subterranean network spanning the surrounding hills. The uncertainty is compelling, pulling you forward without urgency, allowing your curiosity to remain calm and measured. As you advance, the walls display subtle variations in texture and coloration, hints of layering created by centuries of construction and natural sedimentation. Faint scratches and grooves suggest human interaction, perhaps the use of primitive tools to shape the space. Some historians argue that these chambers were adapted over time to meet evolving needs, while others believe the original design was remarkably sophisticated. You take a slow breath, noticing the cool, damp air, the quiet hum of distant water, and the faint scent of mineral-rich stone. The chamber seems to breathe with history, alive in a subdued, hypnotic way. A small alcove appears along the corridor, partially hidden behind the loose stones. You approach it carefully and discover fragments of pottery and stone tools. The shards are worn, their edges softened by time, yet each carries traces of human touch. Evidence hints that they were part of daily life. Yet some scholars propose they may have been deposited intentionally as offerings or markers. The ambiguity invites you to imagine the lives of those who placed them here, the rhythm of their days and the quiet purpose behind their actions. The alcove feels suspended in time, a microcosm of human presence hidden beneath centuries of earth. The passage ahead slopes gently downward into a darker, more confined space. The faint echo of dripping water grows more pronounced, resonating against stone walls that curve around you. You notice tiny mineral deposits catching the torchlight, faint glimmers that lend the chamber a quiet, ethereal glow. Researchers continue to question whether these formations were purely natural or influenced by early human activity. The ambiguity keeps your attention focused, guiding you deeper without disrupting the calm rhythm of exploration. A faint mound of earth interrupts the corridor, partially concealing a flat stone slab embedded in the soil. You brush away moss and loose dirt, revealing subtle carvings along its edge. Some suggest these were symbolic marks, perhaps for ritual or communication, while others believe they serve practical purposes related to daily life. The contrast between certainty and mystery creates a quiet tension, a gentle invitation to continue observing, feeling the textures and traces of human existence preserved over centuries. Finally, the passage widens into a chamber that feels distinctly larger, the ceiling slightly higher and the walls more deliberate in construction. You notice shallow depressions along the floor and faint stone arrangements that hint at planning and design. Scholars remain divided on the overall function of the space, offering interpretations ranging from domestic use to ritual practice. You step carefully, allowing your gaze to wander over every detail: the grooves in the stone, the patterns of mineral deposits, the faint echoes of water, and feel the hypnotic calm of immersion in this hidden world beneath Britain. You step into the chamber ahead, the air cooler and heavier, carrying the faint scent of wet stone and earth. Tiny particles of dust drift slowly in the torchlight, settling over worn stone surfaces and small piles of soil. The walls curve gently inward, irregular yet deliberate, as if shaped by hands that understood the nuances of the earth. Evidence suggests that the chamber was used for some form of activity, yet the exact function remains unclear. You run your fingers lightly over the stone, feeling subtle grooves and indentations that hint at repeated human presence. Long before the world above took the shape we recognize today, a curious detail appears along the far wall. Small impressions, barely perceptible, suggest the placement of wooden posts or supports. Archaeologists are unsure why these supports were necessary, whether they stabilized the chamber or served a more symbolic purpose. You crouch to examine them closely, noticing faint scratches and wear patterns that speak of careful human work. Some scholars propose that the arrangement reflects domestic use, while others argue for ritual significance. The uncertainty deepens your sense of wonder, creating a quiet tension that invites exploration without haste. The chamber widens slightly, revealing what may have been a low platform or bench along one wall. The surface is worn smooth, evidence of countless interactions over time. You notice tiny carvings etched along the edges, subtle symbols almost lost to the centuries. Some researchers suggest they represent early forms of communication or markers of ownership, while others challenge that interpretation, proposing they were purely decorative. The ambiguity is hypnotic, compelling you to imagine the lives that unfolded here and the care invested in even the simplest surfaces. A narrow passage branches off to the left. Partially hidden by soil and roots, you step carefully into it, the stone floor uneven beneath your feet. Small traces of charcoal and ash are embedded in the soil, hinting at fires that once burned in the space. Interpretation varies among experts, with some proposing practical heating or cooking uses and others suggesting ceremonial or symbolic purposes. You inhale slowly, the cool, earthy air filling your lungs, and sense the quiet persistence of human presence long vanished from the surface world. As you move further, subtle mineral deposits catch your torchlight, creating a faint glimmer across the walls. A delicate pattern reveals itself in the arrangement of stones along the floor, perhaps forming a spiral or circular shape. Researchers continue to question whether this pattern was intentional, a form of symbolic design, or simply the product of natural processes interacting with human placement. You trace it with your fingertips, feeling the slight elevation of each stone, imagining the attention required to create such detail. The corridor narrows again, and the sound of dripping water grows more distinct, echoing softly in the confined space. Small indentations in the walls suggest repeated contact with tools or hands, yet the origin remains uncertain. Some scholars propose that these traces were left during construction or modification, while others suggest they may have served as tactile guides in the dim underground light. The ambiguity enhances your sense of immersion, the rhythm of exploration becoming calm, deliberate, and hypnotic. A subtle mound of soil marks the approach to another chamber. You kneel to brush away moss and loose dirt, revealing the edge of a flat stone embedded in the ground. Tiny carvings along the surface catch the torchlight, delicate and intricate. Evidence suggests a human origin, but no one fully understands their meaning. Some researchers believe they were symbolic, perhaps connected to ritual practice, while others propose functional use related to storage or daily life. The chamber feels suspended in time, its quiet presence inviting reflection on the people who shaped it and the choices they made in this hidden world. Small fragments of pottery lie scattered across the floor. You pick one up, noting its rounded edges and faint incisions. Interpretation varies among experts, with some proposing these were utilitarian objects and others suggesting ceremonial significance. The ambiguity does not diminish their presence, instead, it deepens your curiosity, allowing your imagination to fill the gaps in history. You trace the edges with your fingers, feeling a tactile connection to lives lived centuries before. At the far end of the chamber, the floor rises slightly, forming a gentle incline. You step carefully along it, noting subtle grooves in the stone that may have served as pathways. A subtle clue emerges in the alignment of these grooves, hinting at a deliberate plan in the construction of the space. Archaeologists are unsure whether the design reflects repeated domestic activity or more complex spatial planning. You pause to absorb the quiet atmosphere, listening to the faint echo of water dripping and the soft whisper of your own movements. Finally, you arrive at a low stone threshold leading further downward. The air grows cooler and more humid, carrying the faint scent of mineral-rich stone and undisturbed earth. Evidence hints at continuation beyond this point, yet the full extent of the underground network remains unknown. Some scholars propose that these chambers were part of an extensive system connecting multiple settlements, while others believe they were isolated pockets of activity. The uncertainty is comforting rather than unsettling, encouraging you to continue slowly, deliberately. Guided by curiosity and a calm awareness of the hidden history beneath your feet, you descend carefully through the low threshold, the air growing cooler and heavier with each step. The faint scent of wet stone and earth mingles with a subtle trace of moss. Carrying the quiet weight of centuries, small dust particles drift lazily in the torchlight. Their slow movement almost hypnotic. You notice how the corridor narrows slightly, forcing you to move with deliberate care. Evidence suggests this narrowing may have been intentional, possibly to regulate movement or create a sense of separation between spaces. Yet no one fully understands the purpose. The quiet rhythm of your steps blends seamlessly with distant water echoes, creating a calm but attentive focus. A subtle curve in the wall catches your attention. You move closer, brushing your fingers along the cool stone, feeling faint scratches and shallow grooves. Some researchers propose these were made by tools during construction, while others argue they might have been added later to mark boundaries or paths. The origin remains uncertain, yet the presence of such details invites contemplation. You pause to trace the grooves slowly, imagining the hands that touched them, the careful motions repeated over time, the lives shaped by this underground world. The chamber ahead opens slightly, the ceiling rising just enough to allow a fuller view. Small piles of soil line the edges of the floor, forming low terraces or markers. Archaeologists are unsure why these were placed here. Some suggest they served a practical function, perhaps for storage or organization, while others believe they may have had symbolic significance, delineating space for ritual or ceremony. You kneel to examine one of the piles, feeling the compacted earth beneath your fingers and noticing subtle variations in texture that hint at repeated human activity. A curious detail emerges along the far wall. Tiny fragments of charcoal and ash are embedded in shallow depressions. Some scholars suggest that these are remnants of fires used for cooking or warmth, while others argue they were part of ceremonial practices. The ambiguity encourages your imagination to wander, conjuring the soft glow of flames illuminating the chamber, shadows dancing across the stone walls, and the quiet murmur of voices long forgotten. You take a slow breath, absorbing the stillness and the subtle echo of the past that surrounds you. You continue along a faintly worn path, the floor slightly uneven beneath your feet. Small indentations and grooves suggest repeated use over many years. Though the exact purpose is unclear, evidence hints at daily activity. Yet some researchers propose that the space may have also served for seasonal gatherings or special events. The uncertainty adds depth to the chamber's atmosphere, keeping your mind attentive without disturbing the calm. Hypnotic rhythm of your exploration. A low mound of stone and earth marks the entrance to a smaller adjoining chamber. You kneel to remove loose soil and notice the edge of a flat stone partially covered by moss. Faint carvings appear along its surface, subtle and deliberate. Some suggest these carvings may have been symbolic, intended to convey meaning or ritual significance, while others propose functional use, perhaps as markers or guides. Scholars remain divided on their interpretation, each possibility enhancing the quiet curiosity that surrounds the chamber. Small shards of pottery and stone tools lie scattered across the floor. You pick one up and notice delicate incisions along its surface. Researchers continue to debate whether these markings were decorative, utilitarian, or symbolic, reflecting the duality of practical life and cultural expression. A subtle clue hints at repeated handling or placement, suggesting care and attention in their use. You feel a quiet connection to the people who once moved through this space, their presence faint but enduring, whispered through the stones and soil. The chamber narrows again into a corridor leading further underground. The air grows heavier, slightly humid, carrying the faint mineral scent of stone and earth. Tiny reflections glimmer across the walls, traces of mineral deposits catching your torchlight. Evidence suggests the corridor was shaped deliberately, though interpretation varies among experts. Some argue it was designed for structural stability, while others see potential symbolic significance, possibly to guide or separate spaces. The uncertainty is engaging, keeping your focus attentive and reflective. Along the walls, faint patterns emerge, subtle arrangements of stone that might form spirals or geometric shapes. Some researchers suggest these were early symbolic designs, while others argue they are accidental formations shaped by natural sedimentation over centuries. You kneel to observe, tracing the shapes with your fingers, letting your imagination fill in the narrative of their origin. The quiet tension of uncertainty enhances your sense of immersion, allowing you to feel present in a space that has persisted through millennia. Finally, the corridor opens into a low-ceilinged chamber, the largest yet, its walls rising gently to create a sense of enclosure and focus. Small depressions along the floor suggest repeated human activity, yet the precise function remains unresolved. Some scholars propose it was communal, while others suggest it may have held ceremonial importance. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air wash over you, absorbing the quiet resonance of history and the hypnotic rhythm of exploration as you prepare to move deeper into this underground world beneath Britain. You move carefully into the chamber, feeling the cold, damp stone beneath your fingertips as your eyes adjust to the dim torchlight. The air is thick, carrying the faint aroma of wet earth and mineral-rich stone. Tiny particles drift lazily through the faint light, settling over uneven stone surfaces and small piles of soil. A curious detail emerges along one wall, subtle indentations that might indicate where wooden beams or posts once stood. Archaeologists are unsure of their exact function. Some suggest structural support, while others propose symbolic or ritual use. The ambiguity invites your mind to imagine the people who shaped this space, their careful attention preserved in the stone beneath your hands. The chamber widens slightly, revealing what appears to be a shallow depression in the floor. Evidence hints at repeated use, yet no one fully understands the purpose. Small fragments of charcoal and ash embedded in the soil suggest fire once burned here. Researchers continue to debate whether these fires were primarily for warmth, cooking, or ceremonial practice. You trace the depression with your fingertips, feeling the subtle undulations and imagining the soft glow of flames casting light across the walls. Shadows would have danced quietly over the carved symbols and worn stone, illuminating lives now largely forgotten. As you walk further, the walls curve inward slightly, creating a sense of intimacy and enclosure. Tiny carvings etched into the stone appear along the edges, subtle and almost imperceptible. Some scholars propose these markings were symbolic, perhaps serving as communication or ritual notation. Others argue they were functional, guiding placement of object or indicating spatial organization. The origin remains uncertain, and the mystery enhances your sense of immersion. The hypnotic quality of the chamber encouraging slow, deliberate observation. Small shards of pottery lie scattered across the floor. You pick one up, noting faint incisions along its surface. Some researchers believe these were utilitarian objects, part of daily life, while others suggest ceremonial or symbolic significance. The duality of interpretation adds a quiet tension, allowing your imagination to trace the lives of those who once inhabited this hidden world. The shard feels cold and smooth beneath your fingers, a tangible link to centuries of human presence beneath the hills above. You continue along a faintly worn path toward a narrow passage branching off to one side. The stone floor is uneven, and small depressions suggest repeated movement. Evidence hints at functional use, yet interpretation varies among scholars. Some propose the passage connected domestic or storage areas, while others argue it may have led to spaces used for ritual purposes. You step carefully, letting the soft echo of your movement mingle with the distant sound of dripping water, creating a rhythm both calming and alerting. A subtle mound of stone partially conceals a flat slab embedded in the floor. You brush away moss and soil to reveal faint carvings along the surface. Interpretation varies, with some researchers suggesting symbolic significance, others proposing utilitarian function. The ambiguity heightens your curiosity, inviting you to imagine the care and intention required to create these subtle marks. Each touch seems to connect you with the generations that once moved deliberately through these spaces, shaping them with patience and quiet purpose. The corridor ahead slopes gently downward, the air growing cooler and slightly heavier. Tiny mineral deposits catch the faint torchlight, glimmering softly across the stone. Some scholars argue these formations are entirely natural, while others suggest that human activity may have influenced their placement or shaping. You trace your hand along the wall, feeling the slight texture, imagining the hands that touched it centuries ago. The subtle tension between certainty and mystery keeps you focused, engaged in the quiet rhythm of exploration. You notice small impressions along the floor, shallow and rounded. Some researchers believe these may be footprints, while others propose they are the marks of tools or small objects moved repeatedly across the space. The interpretation remains unresolved, and the uncertainty enhances the chamber's hypnotic atmosphere. You step slowly, letting your senses attune to the sound of your own movement echoing softly through the space, blending with the faint dripping of water and the subtle draft of air from deeper chambers. Along the far wall, faint patterns emerge, almost imperceptible spirals and arrangements of small stones. Evidence suggests deliberate placement, yet no one fully understands the meaning. Some scholars propose symbolic significance. Others argue natural coincidence. You trace the patterns with your fingertips, appreciating the quiet complexity of the space. The chamber feels alive with memory. Each stone, groove, and indentation carrying stories that survive in silence. Finally, you arrive at a low threshold leading to a deeper chamber. The air grows heavier, slightly damp, carrying the faint scent of earth and mineral. Some researchers propose that this next chamber connects to a larger subterranean network, yet the full extent remains unknown. Evidence hints at careful architectural planning, while interpretation of its purpose varies. You step forward slowly, letting the calm tension of mystery guide you further into the hidden. ancient world beneath Britain, aware that each discovery is only a glimpse into centuries of human history waiting to be understood. You step cautiously into the next chamber, the air cooler and slightly damp, carrying the faint mineral scent of stone and soil. Dust particles float slowly in the muted torchlight, settling over small piles of earth and scattered stones. A subtle clue emerges along one wall, faint grooves etched into the surface, nearly imperceptible but clearly deliberate. Some researchers suggest these marks were made as guides for placing objects or for spatial organization, while others propose they may have had symbolic or ritual significance. The origin remains unclear, and the ambiguity heightens your curiosity, drawing you deeper into the quiet rhythm of this hidden world. As you move further, the chamber widens into a low-ceiling space with gentle curves along the walls. Tiny fragments of pottery are embedded in the floor, their edges worn smooth over centuries. Evidence hints at repeated human activity. Yet, interpretation varies. Some scholars argue these shards represent domestic use, perhaps for storage or food preparation, while others propose ceremonial purposes. A delicate pattern appears in the arrangement of the fragments, a subtle spiral that suggests deliberate placement rather than random discard. You kneel to trace the lines with your fingers, imagining the hands that carefully positioned each piece. The chamber floor slopes gently toward a narrow corridor, and you notice small depressions along the stones. Archaeologists are unsure why these indentations exist. Some argue they are remnants of wooden supports. Others suggest repeated foot traffic over generations. The ambiguity encourages your imagination to fill in the story, picturing people moving quietly through the space, carrying small bundles or tools. The faint echo of dripping water from unseen channels creates a rhythm that blends with the stillness, enhancing the hypnotic atmosphere of the underground world. A faint impression on one wall draws your attention. You notice what appears to be a crude carving, etched delicately into the stone surface. Researchers continue to question its meaning. Some suggest it was symbolic, perhaps a marker for rituals or storytelling, while others propose a practical function, such as a guide for positioning objects. The subtlety of the mark invites quiet reflection, as though the chamber itself is whispering fragments of human life that have survived centuries of silence. You move toward a low mound at the edge of the chamber, partially concealing a flat stone slab. Brushing away loose soil, you reveal faint scratches along its surface. Some archaeologists propose these were deliberate symbols, perhaps indicating ownership or serving as ceremonial markers. Others argue they were functional, used in the daily rhythm of underground life. Evidence hints at careful human activity. But no one fully understands the context. You run your fingers lightly over the markings, feeling a connection to the lives that unfolded here long before written records existed. Small shards of flint and stone lie scattered across the floor. Some researchers suggest they were tools, while others argue they may have been offerings or markers of significance. A quiet detail captures your gaze. One fragment has tiny incisions that seem too precise to be random, hinting at intentional shaping. Interpretation varies among experts, leaving the meaning open yet undeniably engaging. You hold the fragment in your hand, imagining the quiet work of early inhabitants shaping tools with patience and care, their lives entwined with the rhythms of the underground. The corridor narrows again, the ceiling low and the walls irregular. Evidence suggests that these chambers may have been adapted over time, yet the original purpose is unknown. Some scholars propose they were part of a larger network connecting multiple settlements, while others argue they were isolated pockets of human activity. The uncertainty adds to the chamber's hypnotic atmosphere, keeping you attentive yet calm. You step carefully, noticing how the soft echo of your movements blends with the faint dripping of water and the subtle airflow from deeper passages. Along the far wall, faint geometric patterns appear among the stone surfaces. Some researchers propose they are symbolic, perhaps marking spatial boundaries or serving as primitive communication. Others argue the designs may have been entirely decorative or the product of natural processes interacting with human placement. A delicate pattern reveals itself in the subtle alignment of stones, capturing your gaze and drawing your imagination toward possibilities of lost meaning and ritual. You pause at the center of the chamber, taking in the quiet expanse. Evidence hints at repeated human activity over generations. Yet interpretation varies. Some archaeologists believe this was a communal space, while others propose specialized functions for small groups or individuals. You imagine the careful coordination of tasks, the movement of small fires for warmth, and the faint flicker of torchlight illuminating stone walls. The ambiguity allows your mind to wander freely while remaining deeply engaged with the chamber's subtle mysteries. Finally, the corridor ahead dips slightly, leading to another chamber beyond. The air grows heavier and slightly humid, carrying the faint aroma of wet earth and stone. Evidence hints at a continuation of this underground network, but the full extent remains unknown. Researchers continue to debate whether these passages were constructed gradually over generations or designed as a single, purposeful system. The uncertainty is compelling, guiding you forward slowly and deliberately, each step deepening your immersion in the hidden, quiet world beneath Britain, where every stone and shadow holds the echo of lives long forgotten. You step carefully into the next chamber, the air noticeably cooler and heavier, carrying the subtle scent of damp stone and earth. The faint echo of distant dripping water resonates softly, creating a rhythm that feels almost like a heartbeat beneath the hills. A subtle clue emerges on the floor, shallow depressions that suggest repeated use over centuries. Some scholars propose they were formed by tools or posts, while others suggest they may be traces of daily movement. The exact purpose remains uncertain, and this ambiguity draws your attention deeper, compelling you to observe each detail with quiet focus. As your eyes adjust, you notice fragments of pottery partially buried in the soil along one wall. Evidence hints at deliberate placement, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers suggest these shards were part of domestic activities such as food preparation or storage, while others propose ceremonial uses, perhaps offerings left within the chamber. A delicate pattern appears among the shards, a subtle alignment that seems intentional, though its meaning is lost to time. You trace the pattern with your fingers, imagining the hands that carefully arranged each piece and the lives intertwined with this hidden chamber. A curious detail catches your gaze along the ceiling. Faint scratches and indentations run across the stone surface, suggesting repeated contact or shaping by tools. Archaeologists are unsure why these marks exist. Some propose they were functional, related to construction or stabilization, while others suggest symbolic or ritualistic purposes. The uncertainty heightens the hypnotic atmosphere of the space, encouraging slow, attentive observation as you move further along the chamber. You step toward a low mound near the center of the chamber, partially concealing a flat stone embedded in the floor. Brushing away loose soil and moss, you reveal faint carvings along its surface. Some researchers argue these were symbolic markers or ritual inscriptions, while others propose functional use, perhaps to designate a workspace or storage area. The origin remains unresolved, allowing your mind to imagine countless possibilities. You run your hand lightly across the stone, feeling the textures and subtle depressions that speak of hands long gone. The chamber narrows slightly into a corridor, the walls irregular and damp. Small traces of charcoal and ash embedded in the floor suggest fire was used here. Some scholars believe these were practical fires for warmth or cooking, while others propose ceremonial use. You inhale slowly, letting the cool, earthy scent fill your senses, and imagine the quiet flicker of flames illuminating the stone walls. Shadows would have danced across subtle carvings, and the faint echoes of voices or movement might have lingered in the chamber long after the fires went out. A delicate pattern appears along one wall, almost imperceptible at first. Tiny arrangements of stones suggest intentional design, perhaps symbolic or functional. Researchers continue to question their purpose. Some argue they mark spatial organization or boundaries, while others see ritual significance. The ambiguity is soothing, drawing your attention to each nuance without disturbing the calm rhythm of exploration. You kneel to examine the stones closely, feeling the faint ridges and curves that hint at human intent. You continue along the corridor, the floor slightly uneven, and notice faint impressions along the walls. Evidence hints at repeated contact, perhaps from hands or tools, though interpretation varies. Some scholars suggest these were used as tactile guides in low light, while others propose symbolic significance. A quiet detail captures your attention. One indentation curves gently, almost like a small footprint or an intentional mark for navigation. The chamber seems to hold its breath, inviting reflection on its past inhabitants. The passage opens into a larger chamber, low-ceilinged but expansive, with subtle curves and terraces along the floor. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone tools are scattered across the space. Interpretation varies among experts, with some suggesting domestic use and others proposing ceremonial or symbolic significance. A subtle clue emerges in the alignment of some fragments, hinting at deliberate placement. You trace the arrangement with your fingers, imagining the coordination and care involved in shaping this hidden world beneath Britain. A faint incline at the far end suggests another passage, the air growing cooler and heavier as you approach. Evidence hints at continuation into a deeper network of chambers, but no one fully understands its extent. Some scholars propose the passages were gradually expanded over generations, while others suggest an intentional, overarching design. The uncertainty draws you forward gently, every step maintaining a calm yet engaged curiosity, guiding you deeper into the quiet, hypnotic underground realm. Finally, you pause before a low threshold leading downward. The scent of wet stone and earth is stronger here, mingled with the faint mineral aroma of long undisturbed soil. Tiny reflections glimmer across the walls, traces of minerals catching the torchlight. Evidence hints at intentional construction, yet interpretation varies widely. Researchers continue to debate whether these spaces were functional, ceremonial, or a combination of both. The ambiguity encourages you to proceed slowly, letting the quiet rhythm of exploration and the subtle tension of history guide your descent further into the hidden, ancient world beneath Britain. You step through the low threshold into a deeper chamber, the air now noticeably cooler and slightly damp, carrying a faint earthy aroma mingled with mineral notes from the stone walls. Tiny particles drift in the muted torchlight, settling slowly on uneven floors and small mounds of soil. Evidence hints that this chamber, like the ones before it, was shaped deliberately, yet the exact function remains unclear. Some researchers propose it may have served as a storage space, while others suggest it was used for rituals or gatherings. The ambiguity invites careful attention, encouraging you to observe slowly and absorb the subtle details around you. Along one wall, small fragments of pottery are embedded in the soil. Some scholars believe they were domestic objects used for food preparation or storage, while others propose ceremonial or symbolic significance. A subtle pattern emerges among the shards, the fragments forming a faint spiral, suggesting intentional placement. You trace the arrangement with your fingers, imagining the hands that carefully positioned each piece. The quiet deliberateness of these actions, lost to centuries, creates a hypnotic sense of connection with the past. A faint impression appears on the floor nearby. It is shallow but distinct, curving gently as if made by a tool, a post, or perhaps repeated footsteps. Archaeologists remain divided on its origin. Some suggest it served as a guide for movement within the chamber, while others see potential symbolic or ritual meaning. You kneel to examine it closely, noticing subtle variations in depth and texture. The ambiguity allows your imagination to wander, picturing people moving deliberately through the chamber, performing tasks or rituals long forgotten. The chamber widens slightly, and the ceiling rises in irregular layers of stone. Small carvings are etched delicately into the walls, faint and subtle. Some researchers propose these symbols were used for communication or storytelling, while others argue they were functional markers for placement of objects or structural guidance. Evidence hints at human intent, yet the precise meaning remains unresolved. You run your hand lightly over the carvings, feeling the faint ridges and imagining the concentration and care required to make each mark in low light. A low mound of soil partially conceals a flat stone slab in the centre of the chamber. Brushing away loose dirt reveals faint scratches and shallow lines along its surface. Some scholars suggest these were symbolic markers, perhaps for rituals or orientation within the space. Others propose functional use, indicating placement of objects or even early measurements. The origin remains uncertain, adding to the hypnotic quality of the chamber. You trace the lines slowly, feeling the connection to the people who carefully shaped this hidden world beneath Britain. Small shards of flint lie scattered across the floor. A curious detail emerges. One piece bears faint incisions, too precise to be random. Researchers continue to debate whether these were practical tools, symbolic markers, or offerings. You pick it up gently, noting its smooth surface and imagining the meticulous work required to shape it. The quiet tension of unanswered questions draws you forward, maintaining focus and engagement while preserving the calm, immersive rhythm of your exploration. The corridor ahead narrows slightly, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints that this passage may lead to another chamber, yet the full extent of the underground network remains unknown. Some scholars argue that these passages were connected gradually over generations, while others propose a single, intentional design. You move carefully, aware of each footstep and the subtle echo of your presence. The uncertainty encourages quiet attention, enhancing the hypnotic, contemplative pace of your journey. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stones catch your eye. Some researchers propose they form geometric or symbolic patterns, while others believe the formations resulted from natural sedimentation, interacting with human placement. A delicate pattern reveals itself in the alignment of stones on the floor, drawing your attention and inviting reflection. The space feels alive with memory, each stone an indentation holding a fragment of a story lost to time yet faintly present beneath the earth. You pause at the centre of the chamber, absorbing the quiet expanse. Evidence suggests repeated human activity over many generations, though interpretation remains varied. Some scholars argue the space was communal, while others see specialised or ceremonial functions. You imagine the movements of people, the faint glow of torchlight illuminating worn walls, and the quiet rhythm of life preserved in subtle traces. The ambiguity deepens the sense of calm curiosity, inviting slow exploration without urgency. Finally, a gentle incline appears at the far end of the chamber, hinting at continuation into a deeper network of tunnels. The air grows cooler and slightly more humid, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and stone. Evidence hints at further chambers beyond your current view, yet the full layout remains unknown. Researchers continue to debate whether these underground spaces formed gradually over time or were part of an intentional, interconnected system. The uncertainty encourages deliberate, attentive movement, guiding you deeper into the hidden, ancient world beneath Britain, where every stone, echo, and shadow holds whispers of lives long forgotten. You step into the next chamber, the air growing cooler and slightly heavier, carrying the faint, earthy aroma of wet stone. Tiny dust particles float lazily in the dim torchlight, settling over uneven floors and small mounds of soil. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall's shallow indentations that suggest repeated contact or use over centuries. Some scholars suggest these may have been functional, perhaps guiding movement or holding small posts, while others propose a symbolic or ritual purpose. The origin remains unclear, and the ambiguity draws your attention further, heightening your curiosity with a gentle, hypnotic pull. As you move deeper, the chamber widens slightly, and fragments of pottery embedded in the soil catch the torchlight. Interpretation varies among experts. Some researchers argue that the shards were everyday objects, used for storage or cooking, while others believe they may have been deposited intentionally as offerings. A delicate pattern appears among them, a subtle arrangement hinting at deliberate placement. You trace the alignment with your fingers, imagining the careful hands that positioned each piece, and the quiet rhythm of lives long past. You notice something unusual along the ceiling. Tiny grooves and scratches run across the stone, suggesting repeated interaction with tools or hands. Archaeologists are unsure why these marks exist. Some propose they were functional, supporting construction or modification, while others argue for symbolic or ritual meaning. The uncertainty enhances the chamber's immersive quality, inviting you to slow your pace and focus on every detail. A faint mound in the centre draws your gaze, brushing away loose soil. You reveal a flat stone slab with subtle carvings. Some scholars suggest these were symbolic markers, perhaps for ritual or guidance within the space, while others argue the markings served practical purposes. The origin remains uncertain. You run your fingers lightly over the stone, feeling its smooth texture and imagining the careful attention given to its creation centuries ago. Small shards of flint and stone are scattered across the floor. A quiet detail captures your gaze. One fragment bears faint, deliberate incisions. Researchers continue to debate their meaning. Some suggest they were practical tools. Others propose symbolic or ceremonial use. You pick up the shard, feeling the worn edges beneath your fingers, and sense a tangible connection to those who once moved carefully through this hidden chamber. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling low and irregular. Evidence hints at human adaptation over time, yet interpretation varies. Some scholars propose this section was part of a larger network linking multiple chambers, while others believe it may have been an isolated area. A subtle clue emerges along the wall, faint geometric patterns in the stone that may indicate symbolic design, or simply the effect of sedimentation over centuries. The ambiguity keeps your mind engaged, inviting reflection without urgency. You pause at a shallow incline leading to another chamber. The air grows heavier and more humid. Tiny reflections of minerals glint across the stone surfaces, subtle and almost ethereal. Evidence suggests the chamber beyond may continue this hidden network, but no one fully understands its extent. Some researchers propose gradual expansion over generations, while others argue for a deliberate, overarching design. The uncertainty enhances the calm rhythm of exploration, keeping your attention attuned to every detail. Small impressions along the corridor floor reveal themselves under closer inspection. Some scholars argue they are footprints. Others propose marks left by tools or small objects repeatedly moved over time. The purpose remains unknown. Yet the ambiguity adds to the hypnotic effect of your journey. You step slowly, listening to the echo of dripping water and the soft hum of the chamber itself, attuned to the layers of history preserved beneath the surface. A faint spiral pattern appears along one wall, Subtle but deliberate. Some researchers suggest it was symbolic, perhaps connected to ritual or orientation, while others propose functional use or accidental formation. You trace the lines with your fingertips, imagining the care required to create such shapes and the quiet intentions of those long gone. The chamber seems to pulse with the memory of human activity, an echo preserved in stone and soil. Finally, the corridor opens into a low-ceilinged chamber, expansive yet intimate, with faint terraces and subtle depressions along the floor. Evidence hints at repeated use over generations. Some scholars suggest communal functions, while others argue specialized activity. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone tools are scattered across the space. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you and absorbing the quiet resonance of history as you prepare to continue deeper into the hidden, ancient world beneath Britain. You advance cautiously into the next chamber, the air growing cooler and carrying the faint scent of damp stone mixed with the earthy aroma of soil. Tiny particles drift slowly in the dim torchlight, settling over small mounds and scattered stones. A delicate pattern reveals itself along the floor, faint lines etched into the stone that suggest repeated use or placement of objects over time. Researchers continue to debate its meaning. Some propose functional purposes, such as guiding movement or indicating storage areas, while others argue it may have held symbolic or ceremonial significance. The uncertainty invites you to observe slowly and attentively, allowing the hypnotic rhythm of the chamber to settle over you. Along the walls, small indentations catch your eye. A subtle clue emerges. The grooves may indicate repeated contact with tools, posts, or perhaps hands over generations. Archaeologists are unsure why these marks exist. Some suggest they were practical, while others see a potential symbolic or ritual purpose. The ambiguity deepens your curiosity, making each step forward a quiet exploration of possibilities. You run your fingers lightly over the rough surfaces, feeling the textures and imagining the hands that once shaped this space. A low mound in the center draws your attention. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the ground. Faint carvings are etched delicately along the surface. Some scholars argue they were symbolic markers, perhaps connected to rituals or spatial orientation, while others propose practical uses, such as guiding placement of objects or activities within the chamber. The origin remains uncertain, and this ambiguity draws you deeper into the subtle rhythm of discovery. You notice small fragments of pottery scattered across the floor. Some researchers suggest they were part of daily life, used for storage or cooking, while others argue they were intentionally deposited, possibly as offerings. A quiet detail captures your gaze. One shard bears faint, deliberate incisions, too precise to be accidental. You trace the markings with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that created them, the lives intertwined with the quiet subterranean space over centuries. The corridor narrows slightly, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at further chambers beyond, yet no one fully understands the extent of this underground network. Some scholars propose the passages grew gradually over generations, adapting to the needs of their users, while others suggest a carefully planned, interconnected system. You move deliberately, the echo of your footsteps blending with the distant sound of dripping water and the soft hum of the earth surrounding you. Something unexpected draws your attention along the walls. Tiny geometric arrangements of stone seem to form subtle shapes, patterns that may have been symbolic or decorative. Interpretation varies among experts. Some argue they were markers for spatial organization, while others see ritual significance. The delicate pattern invites reflection, encouraging your imagination to fill the gaps left by centuries of obscurity. You pause at a gentle slope leading deeper into the chamber. Small impressions along the floor hint at repeated use, yet their purpose remains uncertain. Researchers continue to debate whether they represent human footprints, tool marks, or a combination of both. The ambiguity keeps your attention engaged while maintaining a calm, reflective pace. You step carefully, attuning yourself to the faint rhythm of water dripping in the distance and the subtle draft of air moving through hidden channels. Along the far side of the chamber, faint scratches and shallow grooves in the stone reveal themselves under closer inspection. Evidence suggests human interaction, yet interpretation varies. Some scholars suggest functional purposes, others propose symbolic or ritual meanings. A delicate clue hints at intentional placement, drawing your attention and encouraging quiet reflection. The chamber feels alive with memory, each stone an indentation preserving fragments of lives long gone. Finally, the corridor opens into a low-ceilinged, expansive chamber. Subtle terraces along the floor, faint impressions, and scattered artifacts suggest repeated use over many generations. Interpretation varies among experts, with some proposing communal functions and others suggesting specialized or ritual activity. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air wash over you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence as you prepare to explore further into this hidden world beneath Britain. You step carefully into the next chamber, the air cooler and heavier, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and rich earth. Tiny particles drift lazily in the dim torchlight, settling over uneven floors and small mounds of soil. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall, faint grooves and shallow impressions in the stone. Some scholars suggest they were created for practical purposes, perhaps guiding movement or supporting objects, while others propose symbolic or ceremonial use. The origin remains uncertain, and the ambiguity deepens your focus, inviting you to explore slowly and attentively. Along the floor, small fragments of pottery and flint lie scattered. Evidence hints at repeated human activity, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers propose these objects were everyday tools or containers, while others believe they were placed deliberately as part of a ritual. A delicate pattern appears among the fragments, subtle yet intentional, forming lines and shapes that suggest careful placement. You trace the arrangement with your fingers, imagining the hands that organized each piece, the quiet rhythm of life that persisted in this hidden underground space. You notice something unusual along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and grooves catch the faint torchlight, their purpose unclear. Archaeologists are unsure why these marks exist. Some suggest they were functional, helping with construction or stability, while others propose symbolic or ritual significance. The ambiguity encourages your imagination to wander, picturing ancient hands carefully shaping the stone in low light, and the quiet presence of people moving deliberately through the space. A low mound in the centre of the chamber draws your attention. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the earth. Subtle carvings etched along its surface suggest human intent, though their meaning is disputed. Some scholars argue these were symbolic markers, perhaps related to rituals or spatial orientation, while others propose practical functions, such as guiding activity or indicating storage. The origin remains unresolved, heightening the hypnotic curiosity of the chamber. Small shards of flint and pottery are scattered along the edges. A quiet detail captures your gaze. One fragment bears precise, deliberate incisions. Researchers continue to debate whether it was a tool, a symbolic object, or part of a ceremonial practice. You hold it gently, imagining the care with which it was shaped, the patient attention of its makers, and the rhythm of life that once unfolded here beneath the hills of Britain. The corridor ahead narrows slightly, and the ceiling dips low, forcing you to move with deliberate care. Evidence hints that the passage leads to additional chambers, yet the full extent remains unknown. Some researchers propose that these tunnels grew gradually over generations, adapting to practical needs, while others suggest a pre-planned design linking multiple underground spaces. The uncertainty guides you forward slowly, maintaining a calm, immersive pace. Along the walls, faint geometric patterns appear in subtle alignments of stone. Interpretation varies widely. Some scholars suggest they were symbolic, marking boundaries or conveying information, while others propose they were decorative or accidental formations shaped by sedimentation over centuries. A delicate pattern catches your attention, drawing your fingers across its contours as you imagine the intent behind its creation. Small impressions along the floor suggest repeated human activity. Though interpretation differs, researchers continue to debate whether they are footprints, tool marks, or intentional indicators of movement. The chamber's ambiguity encourages careful observation, inviting you to engage with the space fully while remaining calm and reflective. The faint echo of water dripping and subtle air currents enrich the hypnotic atmosphere, creating a steady rhythm as you move. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber. The walls curve gently inward, and faint terraces along the floor hint at deliberate shaping over time. Small fragments of pottery, stone, and flint are scattered throughout, suggesting repeated use. Some researchers argue this space was communal. Others propose specialized activity or ritual practice. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Aware that each stone and shadow holds fragments of lives long forgotten, you step carefully into the next chamber, the air cooler and heavier, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and earth. Tiny dust particles drift slowly in the torchlight, settling over uneven floors and small mounds of soil. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall, shallow grooves that may have been formed by repeated contact or movement. Some experts propose they were functional, perhaps for guiding foot traffic or supporting small posts, while others believe they may have had symbolic or ritual significance. The origin and purpose remain elusive, drawing you deeper into the quiet rhythm of exploration. Along the floor, fragments of pottery and flint are scattered. Evidence suggests repeated human activity, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers argue these items were used for daily tasks such as food preparation or storage, while others propose they were deposited intentionally as offerings or markers. You pause over a delicate pattern formed by the placement of several shards. Tracing the subtle arrangement with your fingers, it hints at intentionality, a quiet connection to the people who moved through this chamber centuries ago. You notice an unusual mark along the ceiling, faint scratches that catch the torchlight. Archaeologists are exploring whether these were made for structural reasons, such as reinforcing the chamber, or for symbolic purposes. Questions remain about their exact meaning, and this ambiguity invites a contemplative, measured pace. You run your hand lightly over the stone, feeling the grooves and imagining the hands that etched them in dim light long before modern tools existed. A low mound in the centre of the chamber draws your attention. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab with faint carvings along its surface. Some scholars propose these markings were symbolic, possibly related to rituals or orientation within the space, while others argue they had practical uses, such as guiding activities or marking areas for storage. The reason for this remains unknown, adding to the chamber's hypnotic allure. You trace the faint lines with your fingertips, feeling a tactile connection to those who shaped this hidden world. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the edges of the chamber. A quiet detail captures your focus. One shard bears precise, deliberate incisions that seem intentional rather than accidental. Researchers continue to investigate their significance. Some suggest it was a tool. Others propose a ceremonial function. You hold it gently, sensing the meticulous care of its maker and imagining the quiet rhythm of life that unfolded here, preserved in stone and soil. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at a continuation of the underground network. Yet no definitive explanation exists for its full layout. Some scholars propose gradual expansion over generations, while others argue for an intentional, overarching design connecting multiple chambers. The uncertainty encourages deliberate, measured movement, keeping you alert yet calm. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stone appear. Interpretation remains contested among archaeologists. Some suggest symbolic or ritual significance, while others propose functional use for organization or support. You pause over a delicate pattern, tracing the alignment with your fingers and imagining the careful attention of hands long gone. The space feels alive with memory, each stone a quiet witness to human presence over centuries. Small impressions along the floor hint at repeated activity, though the origin remains unclear. Some experts argue they are footprints, while others propose tool marks or intentional markers. You step carefully, allowing the soft echo of your movement to blend with the distant sound of water dripping, creating a hypnotic rhythm that enhances your focus and curiosity. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber. The ceiling rises slightly, and faint terraces along the floor suggest careful shaping. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone are scattered throughout. Some scholars propose communal use, while others see specialized or ritual functions. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you, absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence, and preparing to explore further into the intricate underground world beneath Britain. You step into the next chamber, the air cooler and denser, carrying the faint scent of wet stone and rich earth. Tiny dust motes drift lazily in the flickering torchlight, settling over uneven floors and small mounds of soil. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall, faint lines etched into the stone, almost imperceptible. Some experts propose they were functional, perhaps guiding movement or marking placements, while others suggest a symbolic or ritual purpose. The origin remains uncertain, inviting a slow, deliberate exploration that keeps your attention focused and calm. Along the floor, scattered fragments of pottery and flint hint at repeated human activity. Interpretation varies among scholars. Some suggest these objects were used in daily life, for cooking or storage, while others propose they were deposited intentionally as part of ceremonial practice. A quiet detail captures your gaze. One shard has faint incisions arranged in a subtle pattern. Too precise to be accidental, you trace the pattern with your fingers, imagining the hands that carefully placed it and the rhythm of life long ago beneath the hills. You notice something unusual along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and shallow grooves catch the torchlight, suggesting repeated contact with tools or hands. Archaeologists are unsure why these marks exist. Some argue they were functional, supporting construction or reinforcing the stone, while others propose symbolic significance. The ambiguity enhances your sense of immersion, compelling you to move slowly and attentively through the chamber. A low mound in the center draws your attention. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab with faint carvings. Some researchers propose these were symbolic markers, perhaps connected to ritual or spatial orientation, while others argue they served practical purposes, like designating activity areas. The origin and purpose remain unknown, leaving you with a hypnotic curiosity as you run your fingers over the subtle lines. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the chamber edges. A subtle clue emerges. One shard bears precise, deliberate markings. Experts continue to debate whether it was a tool, an offering, or part of a ceremonial practice, you hold it lightly, imagining the care and attention required to shape it in the quiet, patient rhythm of life in this hidden space. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling dipping slightly. Evidence hints at additional chambers beyond, yet no one fully understands the extent of the underground network. Some researchers propose the tunnels were gradually expanded over generations, adapting to human needs, while others suggest a deliberate design connecting multiple chambers. The uncertainty enhances the hypnotic rhythm of your movement, keeping your senses alert but calm. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stone catch your eye. Some scholars propose symbolic or ritual significance, while others suggest functional use for organization or support. You pause over a delicate pattern, tracing the alignment with your fingertips and imagining the care of hands long gone. Each stone seems to hold memory, a fragment of human presence preserved in silence. Small impressions along the floor hint at repeated activity, though their origin is unclear. Some experts argue they are footprints, others propose tool marks or intentional markers. The chamber's ambiguity encourages slow observation, letting you engage fully with the space while remaining calm and reflective. The faint echo of water dripping and the soft draft of air combine into a hypnotic rhythm that guides your focus. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber, its ceiling rising slightly and faint terraces shaping the floor. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone are scattered throughout. Some researchers suggest communal use, while others propose specialized or ritual functions. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you, absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence, and preparing to continue deeper into the hidden, ancient world beneath Britain. You step cautiously into the next chamber, feeling the air grow cooler and heavier as it presses gently against your skin. The faint scent of damp stone and rich earth fills your senses, mingling with subtle traces of mineral deposits from centuries of undisturbed passage. Small particles float lazily in the torchlight, settling slowly over uneven floors and scattered stones. A subtle clue emerges along the wall shallow, deliberate grooves in the stone that hint at human activity. Some experts propose they were functional, perhaps guiding movement or supporting small posts, while others believe they may have held symbolic or ceremonial significance. The purpose remains uncertain, drawing you deeper into a calm, deliberate rhythm of exploration. Along the floor, fragments of pottery and flint are scattered in faint patterns. Evidence hints at repeated use over many generations, yet interpretation varies. Some scholars argue these items were practical, used in daily tasks like cooking or storage, while others suggest they were placed intentionally for ritual or symbolic purposes. A quiet detail captures your gaze. One shard bears subtle incisions arranged in a deliberate pattern. You trace the lines with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that shape them and the quiet rhythm of life that once unfolded in this hidden space. You notice something unexpected along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and faint depressions run across the stone, their purpose unclear. Archaeologists are exploring whether they were functional, supporting the chamber's structure, or symbolic, perhaps marking events or guiding activity. The ambiguity enhances your focus, encouraging slow, attentive observation and allowing you to immerse fully in the chamber's atmosphere. A low mound in the center draws your attention. Brushing away loose soil, you reveal a flat stone slab partially embedded in the ground. Subtle carvings appear along its surface. Some researchers propose they were symbolic, perhaps for ritual or orientation, while others suggest practical uses such as marking areas for storage or activity. The origin remains unresolved, inviting careful reflection as you run your fingers along the faint lines. Small shards of stone and pottery lie along the edges of the chamber. A delicate pattern emerges among them, too precise to be accidental. Some experts suggest they were ceremonial objects. Others argue they were utilitarian tools. You hold one shard gently, appreciating the meticulous care of its maker and imagining the quiet, deliberate rhythm of life that unfolded here long before the world above took shape. The corridor ahead narrows slightly, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at additional chambers beyond, yet no one fully understands the network's extent. Some researchers propose the passages expanded gradually over generations, adapting to human needs, while others argue for a single, deliberate design. The uncertainty encourages measured movement, keeping your focus calm yet attentive as you descend further. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stone catch your eye. Interpretation varies. Some scholars argue they were symbolic, marking boundaries or carrying ritual significance, while others propose they served a functional purpose in organizing space. A quiet detail captures your gaze. The alignment of several small stones forms a delicate curve, almost like a faint spiral. You trace it with your fingers, imagining the intent and care of hands long gone. Small impressions along the floor reveal themselves under closer inspection. Some researchers suggest they are footprints, while others propose they were made by tools or small objects moved repeatedly. The ambiguity allows your mind to fill in the story, and the echo of your footsteps blends with the distant sound of dripping water, creating a calm, hypnotic rhythm that draws you onward. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber, its ceiling rising slightly and faint terraces forming along the floor. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone lie scattered throughout, evidence of repeated human activity over generations. Some scholars propose communal functions, while others suggest specialized or ceremonial use. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you and absorbing the quiet resonance of human presence preserved for centuries, ready to continue deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You step carefully into the next chamber, the air growing cooler and carrying a subtle, earthy aroma of wet stone and soil. Tiny particles drift lazily in the muted torchlight, settling over uneven floors and scattered stones. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall, faint indentations in the stone that may have been formed by repeated contact or pressure. Some experts suggest they were functional, perhaps supporting wooden posts or guiding movement, while others propose symbolic or ceremonial significance. The purpose remains enigmatic, drawing your attention forward and inviting slow, deliberate exploration. Along the floor, fragments of pottery and flint are scattered in irregular patterns. Evidence hints at repeated human activity, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers propose these objects were used in everyday life, such as for food storage or preparation, while others suggest they may have been deposited intentionally as part of a ritual. A delicate pattern reveals itself among several shards, forming subtle arcs that suggest deliberate placement. You trace the arrangement with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that placed them and the quiet rhythm of life that persisted in this hidden chamber centuries ago. Something unexpected catches your eye along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and shallow grooves run across the stone, faint but deliberate. Archaeologists are unsure how or why these marks were made. Some argue they were structural, supporting the chamber or shaping airflow, while others propose symbolic or ritual functions. The ambiguity encourages careful observation, allowing you to slow your pace and immerse fully in the chamber's subtle atmosphere. A low mound in the center draws your attention. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab with faint carvings etched across its surface. Some experts propose these markings were symbolic, perhaps related to ritual or spatial orientation, while others argue they were functional, indicating placement for objects or activity. The origin remains unclear. leaving room for imagination and quiet reflection as you run your fingers over the stone. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the chamber edges. A quiet detail seems intentional, one fragment bears precise, deliberate incisions. Researchers continue to investigate whether it was a tool, an offering, or part of ceremonial practice. You hold it gently, feeling the smooth edges beneath your fingers, and imagine the careful attention of those who created it. The patient rhythm of life unfolding in this underground space long before the modern world above existed. The corridor ahead narrows slightly, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints that the passage may continue to other chambers, though no one fully understands its extent. Some researchers argue that these tunnels were expanded gradually over generations, adapting to human needs, while others suggest a deliberate interconnected design. The uncertainty guides your steps, encouraging slow, attentive movement while maintaining a calm, reflective state. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stone form faint patterns. Some experts propose symbolic significance, marking boundaries or indicating ritual areas, while others suggest functional uses such as support or organization. A faint impression captures your attention. The alignment of several stones forms a delicate curve. You trace it with your fingers, imagining the careful planning behind its placement. The chamber seems alive with memory, each stone a quiet witness to the past. Small indentations along the floor suggest repeated activity, though the origin remains uncertain. Some researchers believe they are footprints. Others propose tool marks or intentional markers. The ambiguity invites quiet contemplation, allowing you to focus fully on each detail. The soft echo of your footsteps mingles with the distant sound of dripping water, creating a hypnotic rhythm that guides your exploration further into this hidden network. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber, the ceiling rising slightly and faint terraces forming along the floor. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone lie scattered throughout. Some experts propose communal functions, while others suggest specialized or ritual use. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Every stone, shadow, and subtle impression seems to hold a story, guiding you deeper into the mysterious underground world beneath Britain. You step cautiously into the next chamber, the air heavier and cooler, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and rich soil. Tiny motes drift slowly in the torchlight, settling on uneven floors and small mounds of earth. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall, shallow, deliberate grooves that hint at repeated use or contact. Some experts suggest they were functional, possibly guiding movement or supporting small posts, while others propose symbolic or ritual purposes. The origin remains unresolved, encouraging careful observation and a quiet, deliberate pace as you move forward. Along the floor, small fragments of pottery and flint lie scattered in irregular patterns. Evidence hints at ongoing human activity, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers propose these items were practical, used for daily tasks such as food storage or preparation, while others believe they may have been deposited intentionally for ceremonial reasons. A delicate pattern reveals itself among the fragments, faint arcs and lines suggesting deliberate arrangement. You trace the shapes slowly with your fingers, imagining the care and attention given by the people who once moved through this chamber centuries ago. You notice something unusual along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and shallow indentations catch the torchlight. Archaeologists are unsure why these marks exist. Some argue they were structural, supporting the chamber or shaping airflow, while others propose symbolic or ritualistic significance. The ambiguity enhances your sense of immersion, encouraging a slow, thoughtful pace as you absorb the subtle details of the space. A low mound in the center of the chamber draws your gaze, Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the earth. Faint carvings etched across its surface suggest human intention, though the purpose remains uncertain. Some experts propose these marks were symbolic, related to rituals or spatial orientation, while others argue they were functional, guiding placement of objects or activity. The origin is still unknown, leaving space for imagination and quiet reflection as you examine the stone. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the chamber's edges. A subtle clue captures your attention. One fragment bears precise incisions that appear deliberate rather than accidental. Researchers continue to investigate whether it was a tool, a ceremonial object, or part of a ritual practice. You hold it carefully, feeling its smooth edges beneath your fingertips, and imagine the patient hands that shaped it, the careful rhythm of life preserved in this underground chamber long before the modern world existed above. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at continuation into further chambers, though the full network remains unknown. Some scholars argue the tunnels were expanded gradually over generations, adapting to practical needs, while others suggest a deliberate, interconnected design. The uncertainty guides your steps, creating a hypnotic, attentive awareness as you move. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stones form faint geometric shapes. Some researchers suggest symbolic or ritual significance, marking boundaries or sacred spaces, while others argue they were functional, used for organization or support. A quiet detail draws your gaze. The alignment of several stones forms a gentle curve. You trace it with your fingers, imagining the thought and effort that went into placing each piece. The chamber feels alive with memory, every stone quietly recording the presence of human activity. Small impressions along the floor reveal repeated activity, though interpretation varies. Some experts suggest footprints, others propose tool marks or markers of movement. The ambiguity encourages careful observation, allowing you to engage fully with the space while maintaining a calm, reflective pace. The soft echo of water dripping in the distance blends with your footsteps, creating a rhythmic, hypnotic flow that carries you forward. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber. The ceiling rises slightly, and faint terraces along the floor suggest deliberate shaping over time. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone are scattered across the space. Some researchers argue this chamber served communal purposes, while others propose specialized or ritual functions. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Every stone, shadow, and subtle impression feels like a whisper from the past, guiding you deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You step into the next chamber, the air cooler and heavier, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and soil. Tiny particles drift slowly in the muted torchlight, settling over uneven floors and scattered stones. A subtle clue emerges along the wall, faint, shallow depressions in the stone that suggest repeated contact or movement. Some experts propose they were functional, perhaps guiding footsteps or supporting objects, while others argue they may have held symbolic or ritual significance. The purpose remains uncertain, drawing you deeper into careful observation and quiet reflection. Along the floor, scattered fragments of pottery and flint hint at long-standing human activity. Evidence suggests repeated use over generations, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers argue the pieces were practical, used for storage or food preparation, while others believe they were deliberately deposited for ceremonial reasons. A delicate pattern emerges among several shards, forming subtle arcs and lines that appear intentional. You trace the shapes slowly with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that organized them and the quiet rhythm of life that unfolded in this hidden space centuries ago. Something unexpected catches your eye along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and faint grooves appear across the stone, suggesting human interaction. Archaeologists are unsure of their purpose. Some propose the markings were functional, perhaps supporting construction or ventilation, while others suggest symbolic or ritual meaning. The ambiguity adds a hypnotic quality, encouraging slow, attentive observation. You run your hand lightly along the surface, imagining the care and concentration of hands long gone. A low mound in the centre of the chamber draws your attention. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the earth. Faint carvings etched across its surface hint at human intention, though the reason remains unclear. Some experts suggest these marks were symbolic, perhaps for rituals or spatial orientation, while others propose functional use, such as guiding activity or denoting storage areas. The origin and meaning remain enigmatic, enhancing the hypnotic curiosity that draws you forward. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the chamber edges. A quiet detail seems intentional. One fragment bears precise incisions. Researchers continue to investigate its significance. Some suggest it was a tool, others a ceremonial object. You hold it carefully, appreciating the meticulous care required to shape it, and imagining the deliberate rhythm of life in this underground space long before the modern world above. The corridor ahead narrows slightly, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at additional chambers beyond, though no one fully understands the extent. Some scholars argue the tunnels expanded gradually over generations, adapting to human needs, while others suggest a deliberate interconnected design. The uncertainty guides your movements, keeping you engaged yet calm as you continue your descent. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stones form faint geometric patterns. Some researchers propose symbolic or ritual significance, marking sacred spaces or boundaries, while others argue functional use for organization or support. A delicate pattern captures your attention. A gentle curve formed by several stones. You trace it with your fingers, imagining the careful attention and intent of those who once occupied this space. The chamber seems alive with memory, each stone a quiet witness to human activity. Small impressions along the floor reveal traces of repeated activity. Some experts believe they are footprints. Others suggest tool marks or intentional markers. The ambiguity allows your imagination to engage fully, observing the chamber's subtle details while remaining immersed in a calm, reflective rhythm. The faint echo of dripping water blends with the soft sound of your steps, creating a hypnotic cadence that guides you onward. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber. The ceiling rises slightly, and faint terraces along the floor suggest deliberate shaping over time. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone are scattered throughout. Some researchers argue the chamber served communal functions, while others propose specialized or ritual use. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air surround you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Feeling the weight of history and the whispers of lives long forgotten as you move deeper into the hidden, underground world beneath Britain. You step slowly into the next chamber, the air noticeably cooler and tinged with the subtle scent of wet stone and earth. Tiny particles float lazily in the muted torchlight, settling over uneven floors and small mounds of soil. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall, faint indentations that appear deliberate. Some experts propose they were functional, perhaps for guiding movement or supporting objects, while others argue they may have served symbolic or ritual purposes. The origin remains uncertain, drawing you deeper into quiet reflection and careful observation. Along the floor, small shards of pottery and flint are scattered in irregular patterns. Evidence hints at repeated human activity over generations. Yet interpretation varies. Some researchers believe these were utilitarian objects used for food preparation or storage, while others suggest intentional placement for ritual or symbolic meaning. A delicate pattern reveals itself among several shards, forming subtle arcs and alignments. You trace the lines with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that organized them and the rhythm of life that once unfolded here centuries ago. Something unexpected catches your attention along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and shallow grooves run across the stone, faint but deliberate. Archaeologists are unsure why these marks exist. Some argue they were functional, perhaps reinforcing the chamber or guiding airflow, while others suggest symbolic or ceremonial significance. The ambiguity encourages slow, attentive observation, allowing your imagination to engage fully with the space. A low mound in the centre draws your gaze. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the earth. Faint carvings etched across its surface hint at human intent, though the reason remains enigmatic. Some experts propose these marks were symbolic, perhaps related to rituals or orientation within the chamber, while others argue functional use, such as marking areas for activity or storage. The origin and meaning remain unknown, inviting quiet reflection. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the edges of the chamber. A subtle clue draws your attention. One fragment bears precise incisions that appear intentional. Researchers continue to explore its significance. Some suggest it was a tool, others a ceremonial object. You hold it gently, appreciating the meticulous care of its maker and imagining the patient. Deliberate rhythm of life in this underground space long before the modern world above existed. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling dipping slightly. Evidence hints at further chambers beyond, though no definitive explanation exists for the full extent. Some scholars propose that these tunnels were gradually expanded over generations to meet human needs, while others argue for a deliberate interconnected design. The uncertainty encourages careful, reflective movement, allowing the chamber's subtle atmosphere to guide you. Along the walls, faint arrangements of stone appear. Some researchers suggest symbolic significance, perhaps marking boundaries or sacred areas, while others propose functional use for organization or support. A quiet detail captures your gaze, a gentle curve formed by several small stones. You trace the alignment with your fingertips, imagining the deliberate attention of the people who placed them. The chamber feels alive with memory, each stone a witness to the lives that once occupied this hidden space. Small impressions along the floor hint at repeated activity, though interpretation remains contested. Some experts argue these are footprints, while others suggest tool marks or intentional markers. The ambiguity allows your mind to explore possibilities while maintaining a calm, reflective state. The faint echo of dripping water mingles with the soft sound of your steps, creating a hypnotic rhythm that guides you onward. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber, the ceiling rising slightly and faint terraces forming along the floor. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone are scattered throughout. Some researchers suggest communal use, while others propose specialized or ritual functions. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air surround you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Every stone, shadow, and subtle impression seems to hold a story, guiding you deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You step into the next chamber, the air cooler and heavier, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and rich soil. Tiny dust particles drift lazily in the muted torchlight, settling on uneven floors and small mounds of earth. A subtle clue emerges along one wall, faint scratches and shallow indentations. Some experts propose these were functional, perhaps guiding movement or holding objects in place, while others argue they may have had symbolic or ceremonial significance. The origin remains unresolved. drawing you into a quiet, contemplative rhythm as you explore the chamber. Along the floor, scattered shards of pottery and flint hint at human activity over generations. Evidence suggests repeated use, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers believe these were utilitarian, used for cooking or storage, while others suggest intentional placement for ritual purposes. A delicate pattern reveals itself among the shards, faint arcs and lines that suggest careful organization. You trace the shapes with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that arranged them and the quiet lives that unfolded here long ago. Something unexpected draws your attention along the ceiling. Tiny grooves and shallow markings appear deliberate. Archaeologists are unsure why these traces exist. Some argue they were functional, perhaps reinforcing the chamber or shaping airflow, while others suggest symbolic or ritual use. The uncertainty heightens your awareness, encouraging slow, attentive observation as you move forward. A low mound in the center of the chamber captures your gaze. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the ground. Faint carvings etched across the surface suggest human intent, though the purpose remains unclear. Some experts propose they were symbolic markers, perhaps for ritual or spatial orientation, while others suggest practical use, such as marking activity areas or storage locations. The origin remains enigmatic, drawing you into quiet reflection. Small shards of flint and pottery are scattered along the chamber edges. A subtle clue appears. One fragment bears precise, deliberate incisions. Researchers continue to explore its significance. Some suggest it was a tool, while others argue it may have had ceremonial or symbolic function. You hold it gently, imagining the careful work and patient attention of those who created it, and the rhythm of life in this subterranean space long before modern Britain existed above. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at further chambers beyond, though the full extent remains unknown. Some scholars propose gradual expansion over generations, adapting to practical needs, while others argue for a deliberate, interconnected design. The uncertainty encourages careful, reflective movement, keeping your focus calm yet attentive. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stone catch your attention. Some researchers suggest symbolic or ritual significance, while others propose functional use for organization or structural support. A quiet detail emerges. The alignment of several small stones forms a gentle curve. You trace the curve with your fingertips, imagining the hands that placed them and the deliberate care involved. Each stone seems to hold a fragment of memory, a whisper of human presence preserved across centuries. Small impressions along the floor hint at repeated activity, though interpretation remains uncertain. Some experts argue they are footprints. Others suggest tool marks or intentional markers. The ambiguity allows your imagination to engage fully while maintaining a calm, reflective state. The soft echo of dripping water mingles with the sound of your own steps, creating a steady, hypnotic rhythm. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber. The ceiling rises slightly, and faint terraces along the floor suggest careful shaping over time. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone are scattered throughout. Some researchers suggest communal functions, while others propose specialized or ritual use. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Every stone, shadow, and subtle impression seems to hold a story, guiding you deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You step into the next chamber, the air cooler and dense, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and earth that has lingered for centuries. Tiny dust particles drift slowly in the muted torchlight, settling over uneven floors and small mounds of soil. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall, shallow impressions in the stone that appear deliberate. Some experts suggest these were functional, perhaps to guide a movement or support objects, while others propose symbolic or ritual significance. The origin remains unclear, encouraging slow, deliberate observation as you move deeper into the chamber. Along the floor, fragments of pottery and flint lie scattered in irregular patterns. Evidence hints at repeated human activity, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers propose they were practical objects for daily use, such as cooking or storage, while others believe they were placed intentionally for ceremonial purposes. A quiet detail captures your attention. One shard bears faint, deliberate markings that suggest careful placement. You trace the lines with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that shaped them and the rhythm of life long ago in this hidden space. Something unexpected catches your eye along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and shallow grooves appear across the stone surface, their purpose uncertain. Archaeologists are unsure whether these marks were functional, perhaps reinforcing the chamber or shaping airflow, or symbolic, possibly part of a ritual practice. The ambiguity heightens your focus, encouraging slow, reflective observation as you move forward. A low mound in the center draws your gaze. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the earth. Faint carvings etched across its surface hint at human intent, though the meaning remains uncertain. Some experts propose the markings were symbolic, perhaps connected to rituals or orientation, while others suggest practical use, such as guiding activity or marking storage locations. The origin remains enigmatic, allowing you to imagine multiple possibilities. Small shards of flint and pottery are scattered along the chamber edges. A subtle clue draws your attention. One fragment bears precise incisions that appear intentional. Researchers continue to investigate its purpose. Some suggest it was a tool, while others propose ceremonial or symbolic use. You hold it gently, feeling the worn edges beneath your fingers, and imagine the careful rhythm of life that unfolded here long before the surface world existed as it does today. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at additional chambers beyond, though the full network remains unknown. Some scholars propose that the passages expanded gradually over generations, adapting to human needs, while others argue for a deliberate, interconnected design. The uncertainty encourages attentive, reflective movement, guiding your steps with careful consideration. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stones form faint patterns. Some researchers suggest symbolic or ritual significance, marking boundaries or sacred areas, while others argue they were functional, used for structural support or spatial organization. A delicate pattern emerges along the floor, the gentle alignment of several stones forming a subtle curve. You trace the shape with your fingertips, imagining the thought and care of those who placed them centuries ago. Each stone seems to hold memory, a quiet witness to human presence and activity. Small impressions along the floor reveal traces of repeated movement. Some researchers propose they are footprints, while others argue they are tool marks or markers of passage. The ambiguity allows your imagination to engage fully while maintaining a calm, reflective pace. The soft echo of dripping water mingles with the quiet rhythm of your footsteps, creating a hypnotic flow that guides you further. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber. The ceiling rises slightly, and faint terraces along the floor suggest careful shaping over time. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone lie scattered across the space. Some researchers argue the chamber served communal functions, while others propose specialized or ritual use. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Every stone, shadow. And subtle impression seems to carry a story, guiding you deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You step carefully into the next chamber, the air cooler and slightly heavier, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and the rich aroma of soil that has settled it for centuries. Tiny dust motes float slowly in the muted torchlight, drifting over uneven floors and scattered stones. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall, faint indentations that suggest deliberate human interaction. Some experts propose they were functional, perhaps guiding movement or supporting objects, while others believe they had symbolic or ritual significance. The origin remains mysterious, inviting slow, attentive observation as you move deeper into the chamber. Along the floor, shards of pottery and flint lie scattered. Evidence hints at repeated use, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers suggest these were utilitarian objects, used for storage or food preparation, while others argue they were deposited intentionally for ceremonial purposes. A delicate pattern reveals itself among the fragments, faint arcs and alignments that suggest careful placement. You trace the lines with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that arrange them and the quiet rhythm of life long ago beneath the hills. An intriguing trace appears along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and shallow grooves catch the torchlight. Archaeologists are unsure of their origin. Some propose they were functional, perhaps reinforcing the chamber or shaping airflow, while others suggest symbolic or ritual purposes. The ambiguity enhances your sense of immersion, compelling slow, deliberate observation and attentive focus. A low mound in the centre of the chamber draws your gaze. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab, partially embedded in the earth. Faint carvings etched across its surface hint at human intention, though the meaning is debated. Some experts suggest symbolic use, possibly for rituals or spatial orientation, while others argue they were functional, marking areas for activity or storage. The origin and purpose remain unresolved, inviting reflection and imaginative engagement. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the chamber edges. A quiet detail seems intentional, one fragment bears precise, deliberate incisions. Researchers continue to investigate its significance. Some suggest it was a tool, while others propose ceremonial or symbolic use. You hold it carefully, feeling its worn edges beneath your fingertips, imagining the patient. Deliberate rhythm of life that once unfolded in this hidden underground space. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at additional chambers beyond, yet the full extent of the network remains unknown. Some experts propose the passages were gradually expanded over generations to meet human needs, while others argue for a deliberate, interconnected design. The uncertainty encourages slow, attentive movement, keeping your focus calm yet engaged. You notice a delicate pattern along the walls, faint arrangements of stone forming subtle curves. Some researchers propose symbolic or ritual significance, marking sacred spaces or boundaries, while others suggest functional use, such as structural support or organization. A quiet detail draws your attention: the alignment of several small stones forming a gentle arc. You trace it with your fingertips, imagining the careful planning behind each placement, and the quiet hands that shaped this chamber centuries ago. Small impressions along the floor hint at repeated human activity. Some experts suggest footprints, others propose tool marks or deliberate markers. The ambiguity allows your mind to explore multiple possibilities while maintaining a reflective, calm pace. The faint echo of dripping water blends with your footsteps, creating a hypnotic rhythm that carries you onward. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber, the ceiling rising slightly and faint terraces forming along the floor. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone lie scattered throughout. Some experts argue the chamber served communal functions, while others suggest specialized or ritual use. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air surround you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Each stone, shadow, and subtle impression seems to hold a story, guiding you deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You step into the next chamber, the air cooler and heavier, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and the subtle richness of long-settled earth. Tiny particles drift slowly in the muted torchlight, settling on uneven floors and scattered stones. A subtle clue emerges along one wall's shallow grooves that appear intentional. Some experts propose they were functional, perhaps guiding movement or supporting objects, while others argue they may have been symbolic or ritualistic. The origin remains mysterious, drawing you into quiet contemplation and careful observation. Along the floor, shards of pottery and flint are scattered in irregular patterns. Evidence hints at repeated human activity over generations. Yet, interpretation varies. Some researchers argue these were utilitarian objects used for cooking or storage, while others propose ceremonial or symbolic placement. A delicate pattern reveals itself among several fragments, subtle arcs and alignments that suggest deliberate organization. You trace the arrangement with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that carefully positioned each piece and the quiet rhythm of life long ago in this hidden space. Something unexpected draws your attention along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and faint indentations suggest repeated human interaction. Archaeologists are unsure of their origin. Some suggest the markings were functional, perhaps reinforcing the chamber or shaping airflow, while others propose symbolic or ritual use. The ambiguity encourages careful, slow observation, letting your imagination wander gently as you explore. A low mound in the center of the chamber draws your gaze. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the ground. Faint carvings appear along its surface, hinting at human intent. Some researchers propose symbolic use, perhaps for rituals or orientation, while others argue functional purposes, marking storage areas or activity spaces. The origin remains enigmatic, inviting reflection and thoughtful engagement. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the chamber edges. A quiet detail captures your attention. One fragment bears precise, deliberate incisions. Researchers continue to explore its significance. Some suggest it was a tool, others argue ceremonial or symbolic function. You hold it gently, imagining the careful attention of the hands that made it, the patient rhythm of life that unfolded long ago in this subterranean space. The corridor ahead narrows slightly, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at further chambers beyond, though the full extent remains unknown. Some scholars propose the tunnels were gradually expanded over generations to suit practical needs, while others argue for a deliberate, interconnected design. The uncertainty encourages slow, reflective movement, keeping your attention alert and calm. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stones form faint patterns. Some researchers propose symbolic or ritual significance, marking boundaries or sacred areas, while others suggest functional use, such as support or spatial organization. A delicate feature draws your eye, the alignment of small stones forming a gentle curve. You trace it with your fingers, imagining the intention and care behind each placement. The quiet presence of hands long gone. Small impressions along the floor hint at repeated movement. Though interpretation is uncertain, some experts suggest footprints. Others propose tool marks or intentional markers. The ambiguity allows your imagination to engage fully while maintaining a reflective, calm rhythm. The faint echo of dripping water mingles with the soft sound of your footsteps, creating a hypnotic cadence that guides you onward. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber, its ceiling rising slightly and faint terraces forming along the floor. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone lie scattered throughout. Some researchers argue the space served communal functions, while others propose specialized or ritual use. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Every stone, shadow, and subtle impression seems to carry a story, guiding you deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You step cautiously into the next chamber, feeling the air grow cooler and heavier, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and the earthy aroma of long-settled soil. Tiny dust particles drift slowly in the torchlight, settling over uneven floors and small mounds of earth. A subtle clue appears along the far wall, shallow grooves that suggest deliberate human interaction. Some experts propose they were functional, perhaps to guide movement or support objects, while others argue they may have had symbolic or ceremonial significance. The origin remains uncertain, inviting quiet reflection and careful observation as you move further into the chamber. Along the floor, small fragments of pottery and flint lie scattered in irregular patterns. Evidence hints at repeated activity over generations, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers suggest these were practical tools and containers, used for cooking or storage, while others propose ceremonial or symbolic placement. A delicate pattern emerges among the shards, subtle arcs and alignments that suggest intentional organization. You trace the shapes with your fingers, imagining the careful hands that arrange them and the quiet rhythm of life that unfolded centuries ago in this hidden space. Something unexpected draws your attention along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and faint indentations appear deliberate. Archaeologists are unsure how or why these markings were created. Some argue they were functional, reinforcing the chamber or shaping airflow, while others propose symbolic or ritual purposes. The ambiguity enhances the hypnotic atmosphere, inviting slow, attentive observation and imaginative engagement with the space. A low mound in the center of the chamber draws your gaze. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the earth. Faint carvings etched across its surface hint at human intent, though their meaning is debated. Some experts propose symbolic use, perhaps connected to ritual or spatial orientation, while others suggest practical purposes, such as marking activity or storage areas. The origin remains enigmatic, adding to the hypnotic allure of the chamber. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the edges. A subtle clue captures your attention. One fragment bears precise, deliberate incisions. Researchers continue to investigate its purpose. Some suggest it was a tool, while others propose ceremonial or symbolic use. You hold it gently, imagining the meticulous attention and careful rhythm of life that once unfolded in this subterranean space, long before the modern world existed above. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at additional chambers beyond, though no one fully understands the network's extent. Some scholars propose that these passages were gradually expanded over generations to suit human needs, while others argue for a deliberate interconnected design. The uncertainty guides your movements, encouraging measured, reflective exploration. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stones form faint geometric patterns. Some experts suggest symbolic or ritual significance, marking sacred spaces or boundaries, while others propose functional uses for organization or support. A quiet detail draws your attention: the gentle curve of small stones aligned across the floor. You trace it with your fingertips, imagining the intent and care behind each placement. The hands that shaped this chamber centuries ago. Small impressions along the floor suggest repeated movement, though their origin is unclear. Some researchers propose footprints, Others suggest tool marks or markers of passage. The ambiguity allows your imagination to wander while maintaining a calm, reflective pace. The soft echo of water dripping mingles with your footsteps, creating a rhythmic, hypnotic flow that carries you onward. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber. The ceiling rises slightly, and faint terraces along the floor suggest careful shaping over time. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone lie scattered throughout. Some researchers propose communal functions, while others argue for specialized or ritual use. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air surround you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Every stone, shadow, and subtle impression seems to carry a story, guiding you deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You step into the next chamber, the air growing noticeably cooler and heavier, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and rich soil. Tiny dust particles drift slowly in the torchlight, settling on uneven floors and small mounds of earth. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall, shallow indentations that seem deliberate. Some experts propose they were functional, perhaps to guide movement or support objects, while others argue they may have held symbolic or ritual significance. The reason for these markings remains enigmatic, drawing you into slow, deliberate observation and quiet reflection. Along the floor, fragments of pottery and flint are scattered in irregular patterns. Evidence hints at repeated human activity over generations, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers suggest these were utilitarian objects, used for cooking, storage, or daily tasks, while others propose ceremonial or symbolic placement. A delicate pattern reveals itself among the shards, subtle arcs and faint alignments that suggest intentional organization. You trace the lines carefully with your fingers, imagining the hands that arranged them and the quiet rhythm of life long ago in this hidden chamber. An intriguing trace appears along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and shallow grooves catch the torchlight, suggesting deliberate human activity. Archaeologists are unsure why these marks exist. Some propose they were functional, reinforcing the chamber or shaping airflow, while others suggest symbolic or ritual purposes. The ambiguity enhances the chamber's hypnotic atmosphere, encouraging slow, attentive observation as you explore. A low mound in the center draws your attention. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the earth. Faint carvings etched across its surface hint at human intention, though the meaning is still debated. Some experts suggest symbolic use, perhaps for ritual or spatial orientation, while others propose functional purposes, such as marking activity zones or storage locations. The origin remains unresolved, inviting quiet contemplation and imaginative engagement. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the chamber edges. A quiet detail captures your focus. One fragment bears precise, deliberate incisions. Researchers continue to investigate its significance. Some suggest it was a tool, while others propose ceremonial or symbolic use. You hold it gently, feeling the worn edges beneath your fingers, imagining the patient, methodical work that shaped it, and the rhythm of life unfolding in this underground space centuries ago. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at further chambers beyond, though the full extent remains uncertain. Some experts propose the tunnels were gradually expanded over generations to meet practical needs, while others argue for a deliberately planned network connecting multiple chambers. The uncertainty guides your steps carefully, keeping you attentive yet calm as you move forward. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stone catch your eye. Some researchers propose symbolic or ritual significance, marking sacred areas or boundaries, while others suggest functional use for organization or structural support. A subtle pattern reveals itself, the gentle alignment of several small stones forming a faint curve. You trace it with your fingers, imagining the deliberate intention behind each placement, and the quiet hands that shaped this chamber centuries ago. Small impressions along the floor hint at repeated activity, though interpretation varies. Some experts suggest footprints, others propose tool marks or intentional markers. The ambiguity allows your imagination to explore multiple possibilities while maintaining a calm, reflective pace. The faint echo of dripping water blends with the soft sound of your steps, creating a hypnotic rhythm that carries you onward. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber, the ceiling rising slightly and faint terraces forming along the floor. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone are scattered throughout. Some researchers suggest communal functions, while others propose specialized or ritual use. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Every stone, shadow, and subtle impression seems to hold a story, guiding you deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You step cautiously into the next chamber, the air heavier and cooler, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and the earthy aroma of centuries-old soil. Tiny dust particles drift slowly in the muted torchlight, settling over uneven floors and small mounds of earth. A subtle clue emerges along one wall, faint grooves and shallow indentations. Some experts suggest these were functional, possibly to guide movement or support objects, while others propose symbolic or ritual use. The origin remains mysterious, drawing you deeper into careful observation and quiet reflection. Along the floor, shards of pottery and flint lie scattered. Evidence hints at repeated activity over generations, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers propose these were practical objects for daily tasks, such as cooking or storage, while others suggest they were placed intentionally for ceremonial or symbolic purposes. A delicate pattern reveals itself among several fragments, forming subtle arcs and alignments. You trace the shapes slowly with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that organize them and the careful rhythm of life that once unfolded in this hidden chamber. Something unexpected catches your eye along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and shallow grooves appear deliberate, suggesting human interaction. Archaeologists are unsure of their origin. Some argue they were functional, reinforcing the chamber or guiding airflow, while others propose symbolic or ritualistic significance. The ambiguity enhances the hypnotic atmosphere, inviting attentive, deliberate exploration. A low mound in the center draws your attention. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the ground. Faint carvings etched across its surface hint at human intent, though the meaning is debated. Some experts propose symbolic use, perhaps for rituals or orientation within the chamber, while others suggest functional purposes, such as marking activity or storage areas. The origin remains unresolved, allowing for quiet reflection and imaginative engagement. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the chamber edges. A subtle clue captures your attention. One fragment bears precise, deliberate incisions. Researchers continue to explore its significance. Some suggest it was a tool, while others argue it may have had ceremonial or symbolic use. You hold it gently, appreciating the careful craftsmanship and the patient rhythm of life preserved in this underground space long before the modern world existed above. The corridor ahead narrows slightly, the ceiling dipping low. Evidence hints at additional chambers beyond, though the full extent remains unknown. Some scholars propose the tunnels were expanded gradually over generations, adapting to human needs, while others argue for a deliberate interconnected design. The uncertainty encourages slow, reflective movement, keeping you alert yet calm. Along the walls, Subtle arrangements of stones form faint geometric patterns. Some researchers propose symbolic or ritual significance, marking sacred areas or boundaries, while others suggest functional use, such as structural support or spatial organization. A delicate feature draws your eye: the gentle alignment of several small stones forming a faint curve. You trace it with your fingers, imagining the intention and care behind each placement. The quiet hands that shaped this chamber centuries ago. Small impressions along the floor suggest repeated activity. Though their origin remains uncertain, some experts argue they are footprints, while others propose tool marks or markers of passage. The ambiguity allows your mind to engage fully while maintaining a calm, reflective pace. The soft echo of dripping water mingles with your footsteps, creating a steady, hypnotic rhythm that carries you onward. Finally, the corridor opens into a larger chamber. The ceiling rises slightly, and faint terraces along the floor suggest careful shaping over time. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone lie scattered throughout. Some researchers suggest communal use, while others propose specialized or ritual activity. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air envelop you and absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Every stone, shadow, and subtle impression seems to carry a story, guiding you deeper into the hidden underground world beneath Britain. You step into the final chamber of this section, the air cooler and heavier, carrying the faint, lingering scent of damp stone and rich earth. Tiny dust particles drift slowly in the muted torchlight, settling over uneven floors and small mounds of soil. A subtle clue emerges along the far wall, faint indentations that suggest deliberate human activity. Some experts propose these were functional, perhaps to guide movement or support objects, while others argue they had symbolic or ceremonial significance. The reason for their presence remains uncertain, inviting careful, reflective observation as you move forward. Along the floor, shards of pottery and flint are scattered in irregular patterns. Evidence hints at repeated activity, yet interpretation varies. Some researchers suggest these were utilitarian items used in daily life, such as cooking or storage, while others propose intentional placement for ceremonial or symbolic purposes. A delicate pattern emerges among several fragments, faint arcs and alignments that suggest deliberate arrangement. You trace the shape slowly with your fingers, imagining the patient hands that organized them and the quiet rhythm of life that unfolded in this hidden space centuries ago. Something unexpected catches your eye along the ceiling. Tiny scratches and shallow grooves appear deliberate. Archaeologists are unsure of their origin. Some argue they were functional, supporting the chamber or shaping airflow, while others propose symbolic or ritual purposes. The ambiguity enhances your sense of immersion, encouraging slow, attentive observation. A low mound in the center draws your attention. Brushing away loose soil reveals a flat stone slab partially embedded in the ground. Faint carvings etched across the surface hint at human intent, though the exact meaning is debated. Some experts propose symbolic use, possibly related to rituals or spatial orientation, while others suggest practical purposes, marking activity or storage areas. The origin remains unresolved, allowing your imagination to explore multiple possibilities. Small shards of flint and pottery lie along the chamber edges. A quiet detail captures your gaze. One fragment bears precise, deliberate incisions. Researchers continue to investigate its significance. Some suggest it was a tool, while others propose ceremonial or symbolic use. You hold it gently, feeling its worn edges beneath your fingers and imagining the careful, deliberate rhythm of life in this subterranean space long before the modern world existed above. The corridor ahead narrows, the ceiling dipping low, evidence hints at further chambers beyond, though the full extent of the underground network remains unknown. Some scholars propose the tunnels were expanded gradually over generations to meet practical needs, while others argue for a deliberate, interconnected design. The uncertainty encourages slow, reflective movement, guiding your steps with careful attention. Along the walls, subtle arrangements of stones form faint patterns. Some experts propose symbolic or ritual significance, marking boundaries or sacred areas, while others suggest functional use for organization or structural support. A delicate pattern emerges, the gentle alignment of several small stones forming a faint curve. You trace it with your fingers, imagining the intent and care of those who placed them centuries ago. Each stone seems to hold memory, a quiet witness to human presence. Small impressions along the floor hint at repeated activity. Though interpretation varies, some experts argue they are footprints, others propose tool marks or deliberate markers. The ambiguity allows your imagination to engage fully while maintaining a calm, reflective pace. The soft echo of dripping water mingles with your footsteps, creating a hypnotic rhythm that carries you onward. Finally, the chamber opens fully, the ceiling rising slightly and faint terraces shaping the floor. Small fragments of pottery, flint, and stone lie scattered throughout. Some researchers propose communal use, while others suggest specialized or ritual activity. You step forward slowly, letting the cool, damp air surround you, absorbing the quiet resonance of centuries of human presence. Every stone, shadow, and subtle impression seems to carry a story, guiding you through the final reaches of the hidden underground world beneath Britain. The torchlight fades slowly as you step back from the last chamber, leaving its shadows and quiet echoes behind. The air grows softer, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and earth that seems almost timeless. Tiny droplets of moisture cling to the walls, reflecting the last flickers of light, while the gentle sound of dripping water forms a slow, steady rhythm that soothes your senses. You notice the faint terraces beneath your feet, worn smooth over centuries, grounding you in the quiet persistence of history. Above, the ceiling rises gently, revealing irregular stone and mineral veins that catch the dim glow. As if the walls themselves remember the hands that shaped them, a soft draft moves through the corridors, carrying the subtle whispers of underground chambers long abandoned. Every stone, every faint mark, every small shard scattered across the floors seems to settle into stillness, each one holding its secret quietly, inviting your mind to release curiosity and drift into calm reflection. The faint echo of water blends with distant air currents, creating a rhythm that is steady and gentle. You walk slowly along the familiar passages, feeling the cool stone under your fingers and the soft hum of ancient spaces around you. Shadows dissolve into darkness, and the chill of the underground gives way to a sense of safe enclosure. The world above fades, leaving only the quiet presence of human activity long past. Suspended in the stillness of time, you pause at the final threshold, the corridors behind you fading into quiet shadow. A soft, gentle calm fills your mind, as though the chambers themselves are exhaling centuries of history into the present moment. The distant sound of dripping water, the faint mineral glow, and the stillness of the stone guide you to a place of rest. You breathe slowly, letting the quiet settle, and feel the weight of centuries dissolve into peace, sweet dreams.